Naruto, the Fuinjutsu professor of the Ninja Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Might Die. The next morning, Might Die followed the address on a card and went to the Keenan Tavern with a strange name. Today, he had slicked his hair shiny and put on a patchless green tights that he only wore during festivals. He looked brand new. Well, this was just his personal feeling. Others couldn't see the difference. But there was a reason why he was so serious. Just last night, after another day of D-level missions, he dragged his dirty body home and got a message from Guy. A teacher named Xia Yan seemed to have a job for him. Might Die was half happy and half worried about this. You know, in recent years, because there have not been many wars in Konoha, the number of ninjas has been increasing. However, the number of missions has not increased much. Therefore, whenever he sees a new batch of ninja school students graduating and becoming genin, Might Die, who is always generous by nature, can't help but feel a little anxious. It's really too curly. Even those dirty and tiring rubbish missions that no one wanted to do before have become popular recently. As soon as they appear, they will be snatched up by those hungry young ninjas. Moreover, the newly graduated young ninjas also need to rely on these D-level missions to run in with the team and adapt to the ninja life. As an old man, he is naturally embarrassed to compete with children. So when Might Die learned that there was a job for him, he was naturally overjoyed. But the teacher's performance of not directly posting the commission in the Okage building made him a little worried. He heard that recently many businessmen or nobles like to poach some older civilian ninjas to provide security services for their industries. Due to the recent high pressure of ninja competition, many ninjas with similar situations as him have chosen this path. It is also said that the end of ninjas is security guards. And their wages are even higher than when they were ninjas, and they are more stable and safe. It sounds good. But Might Die feels that his ninja youth has not burned out yet. You know, he still participates in the tuning exam every year, hoping to get rid of the title of 10,000 years of genin one day. So he didn't know if the teacher had the same idea when he came to him. But thinking of Akai's growing appetite and the rapidly empty rice jar at home, Might Die finally decided to go over and take a look. Soon, he found the location of the Keenan Tavern and found that it was full of noise early in the morning. It seemed that they were doing renovations. There were two people standing at the door of the tavern, one old and one young, discussing the design of the tavern sign. Yes. The name is Keenan Tavern. Remember to make the words big and highlight the key points, but not too big, otherwise it will look low class. Then you have to show a dynamic feeling in static. Finally, make the color of the words black, and it must be colorful black. The silver-haired boy had just finished his request. The old master of the construction team next to him looked at him with a caring look, then waved his hand and walked into the tavern. The old master said that he had been doing this job for decades and had never seen a customer with such an outrageous request. This signboard thing is nothing. What's even more amazing is that when he discussed the interior decoration of the tavern with the young man before, he had worked hard and used 120% of his strength to design a perfect decoration plan for the tavern. Unexpectedly, the young man rejected it after taking a few glances at the design drawings. The reason was, it looks too good, but it doesn't fit the style of my tavern. Are you sure you are opening a tavern instead of a funeral home? Later, he made several revisions and used negative 120% of his strength to make the plan mediocre, but the result was that the young man felt like he had found a treasure. This aesthetic is really despairing. The old master walked in, shaking his head, thinking that he had to let people pay attention to this place to see if he could get the decoration commission from the next store owner in a while. Hello. Why are you ignoring me? Today, such a service attitude is not acceptable. The silver-haired boy, that is, Xia Yan, couldn't keep the old foreman even with the gesture of Erkan's hand, and could only mutter helplessly. There's no way, it seems that I still have to take care of these details myself. At this moment, a rough male voice sounded behind him. Hey, little brother. Excuse me, is this the Keenan Tavern? Yes, but it will take a while to open. Xia Yan answered while turning his head to look. Then his eyes were hit by a critical strike unexpectedly. What came into view was a greasy middle-aged man wearing a green tights, which was very eye-catching. Considering that there would not be a second person in Konoha who dressed like this now. Xia Yan soon found out the other party's identity, Might Die. But Might Die didn't know Xia Yan's identity yet, and said again. Then little brother, are you from this store? Excuse me, is Mr. Yushin here? I have an appointment with him to meet here. You must be Mr. Dai. Xia Yan raised his finger, pointed at himself and smiled. I'm the Mr. Yushin you mentioned, but you can just call me Xia Yan. You are Mr. Yushin. Dai was shocked by Xia Yan's youth. Knowing that Xia Yan was already a teacher at the ninja school at such a young age, Dai felt that his life was a waste of time. And because of the other party's teacher's identity, his tone became a little restrained. Xia Yan, teacher, I heard from Akai that you have a job to entrust to me. Yes, actually my tavern will open in a while, and I need some employees. Dai was embarrassed when he heard this. Sure enough, it was almost the same as he thought. He didn't expect that there would be a day when he would be poached. Seeing his hesitation, Xia Yan understood and explained quickly. This doesn't mean that you have to give up your identity as a ninja, Mr. Dai. Because this tavern is only open at night, the rest of the time is more free, and it won't delay your training and ninja work too much. But you must stay in a hotel. There are dormitories for employees behind the tavern. Of course, if Akai wants, you can live here. As for the salary, do you think this number is okay? Xia Yan said, and gestured a number. Oh, it's too much, I can't do it. Dai waved his hands repeatedly, but in fact he was very tempted. Compared to working hard to complete various D-level tasks, the job provided by teacher Xia Yan is really too tempting. With this job, he can spend less time on low-level tasks and have more time to practice. More importantly, he doesn't have to give up his identity as a ninja. However, the salary for this job is too good, it seems too good to be true, which makes Dai feel uneasy. Teacher Xia Yan, can I ask why you specifically look for someone like me? He asked. Xia Yan smiled and said, Mr. Dai, you are too modest. I have checked the information at the mission center and know that although you have been doing dirty and tiring work that no one wants to do for so many years, you have never been perfunctory and have been working hard for 10 years. Although it has not been widely publicized, everyone's praise for you is still clearly recorded in every mission report. So people like you, Mr. Dai, are not easy to find. Our East Tavern needs talents like you. After hearing what Xia Yan said, Dai burst into tears like a broken dam, and his voice was a little choked. Sure enough, my efforts over the years have not been in vain. Someone will see it eventually. He didn't expect that someone would actually check the reports of his inconspicuous tasks and give him such a high evaluation. He also didn't expect that the first person to agree with him was the young teacher Xia Yan in front of him. Xia Yan felt a little uncomfortable under the burning gaze of Dai, and took 2 steps back and said, Mr. Dai, you don't have to rush to make a decision. Just give me an answer after you think it over. Don't think about it. Youth doesn't allow hesitation. Dai heard this and also made a gesture, expressing his decision with a thumbs up. Teacher Xia Yan, please give me more advice in the future. Of course, the 2 rows of white and shining teeth inherited from his ancestors were indispensable. Xia Yan, who squinted his eyes slightly as if he had eaten a flash bomb, was relieved after getting Dai's definite answer. He was about to discuss the specific work and treatment issues with him in depth. But when he opened his eyes, he only saw the back of Dai turning around and running away. I'll go home now, pack my things and move in. After saying this, he quickly disappeared at the end of the street. Xia Yan was left alone in the wind. After a long time, he finally reacted and couldn't help but sigh. These 2 father and son are indeed biological children. Chapter 52. Tavern opening. After a long time, Xia Yan saw Dai again at the entrance of the Keenan Tavern. But this time he was dragging a cart behind him. In addition to some tattered belongings, there was also a pile of neatly stacked green tights. Behind him was a handstand of Dai. Teacher Xia Yan, thank you for hiring my father. Akai looked up and said with gratitude. To be honest, when his father rushed into the house and said to him, Son, our family is rich, he was shocked. Because he hadn't seen his father so happy for a long time. Xia Yan smiled and waved his hand. It's nothing, actually I took advantage of this matter. Teacher Xia Yan, you are too polite. Dai smiled foolishly, and then suddenly remembered something and began to look for something in the pile of tights. To thank you for your approval, Teacher Xia Yan, I have something to give you. As he spoke, he quickly found a tights that had not been opened. This is a treasure that he has kept for many years and has never worn. It is velvet lined. He has survived all these winters with his integrity. Dai took a last reluctant look at the tights and handed it to Xia Yan with great pain. This is not enough to express his gratitude to teacher Xia Yan. But Might Dai did not notice that in addition to Xia Yan's stiff face, even Kai, who usually looks excited when he sees him recommend tides to others, turned his head and closed his eyes, looking like he couldn't bear to watch. There is no way. After all, Kai had experienced the beauty of teacher Xia Yan's tides when he was training Obito yesterday. The comfort of being one with the body and the sense of liberation like returning to nature made him deeply intoxicated. Compared with the yellow tights, their own green tights looked like a poor imitation. Thinking of this, Kai regretted that he didn't tell his father about the tights because he was afraid that his father would know that he had betrayed the revolution with his thick eyebrows and big eyes. So much so that my father is still unaware that he is trying to sell his tattered clothes to Mr. Xia Yan, the master of tights. He is simply being a traitor. At this time, Xia Yan had already pushed and shot with Might Dai several times, and seeing that he was very persistent, he had no choice but to accept the green tights. Seeing this, Akai was relieved, thinking that Mr. Xia Yan was a good person and did not embarrass his father. However, what caught Akai off guard was that after accepting the tights, Mr. Xia Yan actually took out a card he had seen before. Could it be? Before Akai could stop him, he heard a bang. Xia Yan conjured up a yellow tights in the shape of an adult in his hand and wanted to give it to Might Dai as a return gift. Xia Yan thought that Might Dai would be happy about this, but he actually jumped back and looked at him with a vigilant look. That look, as if he was looking at some heresy. Xia Yan did not expect that Might Dai was actually a fundamentalist of green tights and was so hostile to tights of other colors. As a result, Xia Yan's move to give him a yellow tights in return backfired. Fortunately, Might Dai eventually became the first employee of the Keenan Tavern. Not only that, he also volunteered to join the construction team, which greatly improved the progress of the decoration. Because of his outstanding work performance, even the old foreman of the construction team couldn't help but want to poach him. "You are very talented, learn to do decoration with me." Fortunately, Might Dai stood firm and the old foreman never mentioned this matter again. Of course, this has nothing to do with Xia Yan's frequent practice of throwing shuriken near the old foreman. Considering that the tavern will be very busy for a period of time after opening, and he has been relatively free recently, Xia Yan decided to take advantage of this free time to increase the investigation of the curse of the ceiling class. That's right, although Xia Yan often joked about this matter, he actually did not relax his vigilance. In addition to asking Ikaku teacher to find the incident file for review and asking the family of the deceased for information, Xia Yan did not let go of the teachers of the ninja school. He invited these teachers to several meals and took the opportunity to learn more details. The teachers also knew what he was thinking, so even though they thought it was just an accident, they still told Xia Yan everything they knew in detail. The physical training teacher also said faintly that the previous sealing technique teacher had done the same thing. He added a few more black lines on Xia Yan's forehead. From the information collected from various sources, there was indeed no big doubt about their deaths. It seemed that they were just simply unlucky. If it happened to an ordinary sealing technique ninja, it would definitely not attract any attention. It's just that these three people happened to be sealing technique teachers, which attracted a little attention. Although there were no doubts or suspects, Xia Yan still didn't take it lightly. Because he was familiar with the original work and knew a rule. If someone didn't know who did a bad thing in Konoha, it must have been done by the Tabakichi or Danzo. If this serial killing of the sealing technique teacher was not an accident, then Danzo would basically be the first suspect. As for the motive, why should the Abakichi explain his actions to others? Based on the bad things he did in the original work that hurt others and himself, Xia Yan really didn't want to understand his brain circuits, fearing that he would be infected. However, since no relevant clues were found, Xia Yan would naturally not ask for trouble. As long as the fourth incident did not happen, he would not delve into the past. But he did not relax his own protection, and even became more suspicious. I feel that there are always unruly people who want to harm me. Even so, Xia Yan's life has returned to peace. He teaches, copies books in the library, does research, and gives special training to Kushina and Obito. Time passed peacefully day by day, and soon it was the day for the tavern to open. The sun sets and night falls. It is another ordinary night. Few people know that a tavern called Genin in Alley No. 3 of Ichiraku Avenue will open tonight. Although it is the opening day, the tavern is deserted at this time, with only 3 people. Kushina is sitting in front of a Genin game console, playing the built-in single-player mode inside, enjoying herself. Might Dai was walking back and forth in the tavern, repeatedly wiping the shiny table with a rag, and looking at the door from time to time, expecting the appearance of customers. Xia Yan was sitting at the bar, holding a glass of a mysterious green liquid called AO juice prepared by Might Day, with a look of hesitation on his face, not knowing whether he should taste it. At this moment, Kashina, who had just finished a game on the Keening game console, turned her head and looked around the tavern. Seeing that there were still no customers, she couldn't help but said to Xia Yan, "Xia Yan, are you sure we don't need to do some publicity or something? It's a pity that Sister Summoned is not here, otherwise we can ask her to come and show our support." When I went out with her before, as soon as she sat down, many people would always gather around her. "Hey, our tavern is a place to play cards, not a place to watch football." Xia Yan complained in his heart, put down the cup and said lightly, "Don't be impatient, let the kunai fly for a while. Besides, there are many new things in our tavern, and we don't know what kind of problems it may cause, so let's not be too ostentatious at the beginning, let us accumulate some experience first." "I see." Kashina quickly recognized Xia Yan's explanation and started another game with satisfaction, but after 2 rounds, she reacted again. "But Xia Yan, now that no one knows the existence of this tavern, we can't accumulate any experience." "Who said no one knows? Have you forgotten which big mouth helped us find this store?" Xia Yan's voice had just fallen, and the door of the tavern was pushed open. "Look, isn't there someone come in?" Chapter 53 Umano Waikaku's first experience. Waikaku Umano has always been very concerned about the affairs of the Keenan Tavern. Recently, he has come to the tavern every now and then to check the progress of the renovation, and naturally he also knows the news of the opening tonight. He is so concerned about this, in addition to the fact that he found the store location and the construction team for Xia Yan, and he has an inexplicable sense of responsibility. There is also a little unknown reason. That is, he actually wants to play that Keening cards. Yes, a man's happiness is so simple. To be honest, he has been coveting this game for a long time. After all, this game allows players to fight side by side with those well-known Warring States ninja heroes. Isn't this the dream of all ninjas? Recently, many students are a little curious about why Director Umano patrols back and forth on the first floor every day. In fact, he is just taking the opportunity to peek at everyone playing cards. After days of peeping, he has already figured out the rules and gameplay of this game. He has also simulated many battles in his mind, and even secretly cut paper to make a deck of cards to study the routines. As a senior Keening Cloud player, whenever he saw the young ninjas make mistakes, he wanted to rush up and grab the jewel disc to play himself. Although he could borrow the jewel disc at any time due to his relationship with Xia Yan. But he found that there was no suitable opponent in the school. After all, he was no longer a student, but the 30-year-old Dean Kno. But he didn't have the face to play cards with students wearing a jewel disc. He even felt awkward playing with Xia Yan or Koshina. And those teachers who were about the same age as him were all sanctimonious, thinking that this was something for children to play and were not interested at all. He didn't have the face to suggest playing against them. So when he learned that there was a Keening game machine in this tavern that adults could play openly, he counted the time on his fingers every day, and finally waited until today's opening day. Tonight, he finished all the housework early, changed Iruka's diaper, and finally got permission from his wife Haley, and finally came to the door of this Keenan tavern. He took a deep breath and slowly pushed open the door of the tavern. As soon as he entered the door, Waikaku Umano found that the layout of the tavern was completely different from what he had seen before. At first glance, the most eye-catching thing was naturally the high platform in the center of the tavern. The platform was rectangular, about 1 meter high, with a machine like a podium at each end, and there was room for people to stand around the platform. And around the platform, there were many square tables with strange shapes, 2 of which were placed together as a group, with a backrest chair at each end. Waikaku Umano thought that these should be the Keening game machines that Xia Yan had told him about. It is said that because the space in the tavern is limited, the images projected by these game machines will be reduced. And that high platform should be the venue for the one-to-one projection Keenan duel. Finally, he also saw that there were some ordinary tables and chairs near the bar for people who didn't want to play cards. Waikaku Umano finally breathed a sigh of relief when he found that the whole tavern looked decent. The only thing that made him regret was that the interior decoration of this tavern was very ordinary. It couldn't be said to be ugly, but there was always a feeling of monotony and boredom. What made him even more helpless was that this style was still specified by Xia Yan. The aesthetics was really worrying. It made Waikaku unable to help but propose to add a flower arrangement class to the ninja school to cultivate the students' aesthetics. At this time, Xia Yan also walked over from the bar with a smile on his face. "I knew that you would come tonight, Teacher Waikaku." Waikaku felt that Xia Yan had something to say, and glared slightly and said, "Although I don't have a share in this tavern, I'm responsible for the store, the construction team, and a lot of miscellaneous things. Isn't it okay to come and see the results?" "Okay, of course." Xia Yan raised his hands in surrender, wondering why teacher Waikaku reacted so strongly. Did he eat gunpowder? And it was wrong for him to say that he didn't have a share in the tavern. In fact, Xia Yan had secretly gone to his house to find Aunt Haley without his knowledge and asked her to invest a little money in the tavern. He also used "Auntie, you don't want your husband to get into trouble," as an excuse to ask Aunt No to keep it secret and not tell anyone. After all, when the tavern starts to function as a money-printing machine, he and Kushina will be fine, but Waikaku-sensei's family can't resist the covetousness of so many people. At this time, Kushina and Might Dai also came over and greeted Waikaku. After the greetings, Waikaku looked around the tavern again and began to frown. "Why is there no one in the tavern?" Xia Yan had no choice but to repeat what he had said to Kushina and Might Dai before. "That's right, it's better to be steady at the beginning." Waikaku nodded, and he agreed with Xia Yan's steady approach. After asking about the situation, Waikaku was also ready to get to the point of the night, which was to start his first experience with keening cards. And Xia Yan seemed to have a tacit understanding with him, and suddenly said, "By the way, Waikaku-sensei, do you want to experience the signature product of our tavern?" Waikaku was secretly delighted. He was still thinking about how to naturally propose to play Keenan, but he didn't expect Xia Yan to bring it up first. But he still looked calm on the surface, pretending to be casual, and said, "Since I'm here, I'll give it a try, although I'm not very interested in this kind of thing." Xia Yan smiled slightly, snapped his fingers and said, "Well, Mr. Dai, give this gentleman a glass of green juice." "No problem." Might Dai ran to the bar with excitement. Waikaku. Question mark, question mark, question mark. What is that? Where is my big keening game console? Seeing that Waikaku teacher was confused, Xia Yan explained with a smile. "Teacher, don't underestimate this green juice. It is a secret recipe passed down from Mr. Dai's ancestors. It is a mixture of 72 kinds of ingredients including young barley leaves, young sweet potato leaves, young cabbage leaves, etc. It helps to restore physical strength, replenish nutrition, and is effective for insomnia, constipation, headaches, kidney deficiency and other ninja occupational diseases. Mr. Dai has practiced physical skills for many years and has not damaged his body. It is all thanks to this green juice. So after he contributed this secret recipe, I decided to make it the signature product of our tavern." "Kidney, then I really have to try it." "That's not right." Waikaku finally reacted. "Why do I have to drink so healthily when I come to the pub? And shouldn't the signature product be the keening game console?" Xia Yan looked into the distance with a holy face. "I invented keening cards to bring smiles to everyone, so the keening game console will also be provided to customers for free. So it has surpassed the category of commodities, art. Yes, it has been elevated to an art. With your aesthetic taste, don't mention art, okay?" Looking at Xia Yan intoxicated himself, Waikaku Umano had an expression like an old man looking at his phone on the subway. If he didn't know that Xia Yan was going to make money by selling card packs, he almost believed it. At this moment, Might Dai also went through 7,749 processes to prepare the green juice, and ran over excitedly with a cup of green mysterious liquid, and handed it to Waikaku Umano with both hands. "Is this thing really drinkable?" Waikaku held the cup of green liquid and fell into the same contemplation as Xia Yan just now. After a while, after going to the toilet, Waikaku, with a blue face, finally sat in front of the keening game machine he had been dreaming about. He felt that it was not easy to play a round of this game. He fumbled around on the square table-shaped keening game machine in front of him, but could not get in. He could not help but think of the situation on his wedding night. He asked Xia Yan, "Why doesn't your thing start working?" "Huh. It seems that the sea also said this that night. Waikaku teacher, you have to inject your own chakra into the machine first." Xia Yan patted the metal sphere at the end of the chair armrest and introduced, "Just put your hand on it and inject chakra." So Waikaku did as Xia Yan said. After he injected chakra into the sphere, he saw an interface slowly emerging on the desktop in front of him. Keening card game starting. New user detected. Account is being created. New user 005 has been created, and the keening card game officially begins. Ding. Welcome to the world of keening cards. For your first time playing, please select your initial deck. Several lines of text appeared on the interface one after another, which made Kaku understand a little. But soon, the images of 3 decks appeared on it, and there was a line of text on the top of each deck. The God of Ninja World Senju Hashirama deck, the Shura of Ninja World Uchiha Madara deck, the Phantom Third Man Saratobi Sasuke deck. There was also a phantom of the corresponding character behind each deck. Kaku finally understood that this was asking him to choose which deck to use at the beginning. Why do I have to choose? Can't I have them all? He couldn't help but complain to Xia Yan. Isn't this deliberately making things difficult for people? Xia Yan spread his hands helplessly. This is to prevent new players from having decks that are exactly the same and too monotonous. Of course, the more important thing is to drive some obsessive-compulsive disorder people who are uncomfortable if they don't collect all the cards to death, forcing them to draw and explode to complete the other 2 decks. Kaku also felt that it made sense, so he had to start choosing. First of all, the Uchiha Madara deck can be ruled out. Because of the interference of the mysterious power, Uchiha Madara basically has no matching cards. Although the strength of the single card is still very strong, it has gradually fallen behind that version. More importantly, Kaku Umano is not very interested in the Uchiha clan. The problem is the remaining 2. The first generation of Okage is naturally the first choice, but according to Xia Yan's character, perhaps Saratobi Sasuke is the best choice. After all, the practicality of Saratobi Sasuke in the Kenin cards played by students is even higher than those 2. This also made Kaku sigh that Xia Yan, this kid, is even better at licking than himself. After a moment of entanglement, Kaku Umano decided to follow his inner thoughts and realize his childhood dream. The first generation of Okage, it's decided to be. Kaku Umano shouted. Unfortunately, the machine did not respond. Xia Yan said speechlessly, "Teacher, this machine is not voice-controlled, you have to click it with your hand." Kaku Umano's old face turned red, and he stretched out his hand and clicked on the deck of Senju Hashirama in a gloomy manner. Then the other 2 decks on the interface disappeared, and the remaining deck began to unfold, with all 40 cards displayed in front of him. Kaku Umano couldn't help but lean forward and check the cards he had just received one by one. Senju Kawaruma, Senju Itama, Strange Fist, Palm Immortal Technique. Being a young pill, he read the effects of each card several times before continuing to read, and he was very curious. But when he saw the end, his expression became a little strange again. Wait, Xia Yan, why is there no Senju Hashirama in the Senju Hashirama deck? Chapter 54 Teaching Model. Wait, Xia Yan, why is there no Senju Hashirama in the Senju Hashirama deck? Kaku Umano found this problem after reading all the cards one by one. But it clearly says that this is the Senju Hashirama deck. There is also a shadow of the first Okage behind that deck. As a result, the most powerful card in it is only one Senju marker. Xia Yan, your game console is broken, come and fix it quickly. Kaku Umano turned his head and looked at Xia Yan. Xia Yan looked helpless. If there is really a Senju Hashirama in it, then there is a problem. After all, what can be sold in the future if the initial deck is given to Senju Hashirama? But of course, it is not possible to be so straightforward to Kaku teacher. Xia Yan pondered for a while, thinking about how to explain this problem to a Kaku teacher in this ninja world without wife cakes. It's a pity that Ichiraku ramen has not opened yet, but the idea of ramen inspired Xia Yan, and he immediately said, "Kaku teacher, have you eaten cup noodles? The picture is for reference only, please refer to the actual product." Xia Yan also secretly remembered that he would write this sentence in a very small font in the corner of the screen in the future. Kaku opened his mouth and found that he could not refute it. Since he could make cup noodles, why couldn't he make Geijin cards? But what on earth did this kid go through outside? How could his heart become so dark? He shook his head with great sorrow and decided to use playing cards to soothe his fragile heart. So Kaku suggested, "Forget it, since I have already got the card set, can we start playing? Otherwise, Xia Yan, you will play a game with me first." Xia Yan smiled reservedly. "Teacher, as the first generation dual king, I will not play against others casually. And teacher, you don't even know the rules. I'm afraid you will lose confidence in this game after the game." "Who said I don't know the rules?" Kaku wanted to say this, but it would expose the fact that he peeked at students playing cards every day. So he had nothing to say, and could only watch Xia Yan step forward and touch the interface lightly, and then the cards on it disappeared, and a few lines of text appeared again. Battle Mode, Single Player Mode, Edit Mode, More Tutorial. Teacher Kaku, I recommend that you first complete the tutorial I designed to understand the game rules and the effects of the cards, and then play against real people. And each time you complete a level in this tutorial mode, you will be given a basic card pack as a reward. Card pack? Kaku Amino, who had originally shown little interest in the tutorial, became excited when he heard that there would be a card pack. It's rare, Xia Yan, you actually give away card packs for free? Is there something else going on? Xia Yan's forehead was dotted with black lines. Teacher, do you think I'm some kind of black-hearted businessman? Using gifts to attract customers is a normal business operation. And these card packs are to encourage everyone to learn about the game through the tutorial first, so as to avoid disputes due to not understanding the rules during the battle. Of course, what's more important is that if people don't experience the thrill of opening a pack for free first, how can they spend real money to buy these virtual cards? Xia Yan added in his mind. Kaku Amino thought what he said made some sense, and asked curiously, by the way, how much do you sell the card packs here? Xia Yan pointed to a slit on the Keening game console where coins could be put in and said, put coins in this coin slot, and it will be converted into points in the game, which can be used to buy card packs. As for the price, a standard card pack of 5 cards costs 20 taels. 20 taels. Kaku Amino was shocked. A bowl of ramen only costs 60 taels, and you dare to sell this card pack for 20 taels? Xia Yan, why don't you go rob? How can robbing be as fast as making money as my money printing machine? Xia Yan complained in his heart, but complained on the surface. Teacher, you didn't calculate the wear and tear of the internal components of these machines. The design of cards and projections also takes a lot of time. There are also the operating costs of this tavern. Selling a card pack for 20 taels is actually a loss-making profit. If you think it's too expensive, you can also choose to buy a gift pack. For example, this 648 novice gift pack contains 50 ordinary card packs, 3 rare card packs that must be rare or above, 1 random epic card, and a skin and card pack for the 6th sage. And now it's still during the limited time opening event. As long as you make the first recharge of 6 taels, you will get a rare card Blue 8 Mighty. Kaku was confused by Xia Yan's words. He shook his head and began to count on his fingers. He couldn't accept spending the price of 10 bowls of ramen to buy a bunch of things that he could see but couldn't touch. But compared with the standard price of the card pack, the original 648 taels that could only buy 32 card packs, now you can get 50 card packs at once, and there are so many other rewards, it seems very cost-effective. It feels like buying a few more copies will make Xia Yan bankrupt. And the mighty card that is the first to rush for rewards, although it is not very attractive in itself, but with the world's limited time and out of print, it suddenly makes Kaku feel itchy. It feels like it would be a loss if he doesn't buy it now. After all, you never know when it will be useful. Thinking of this, Kaku couldn't help but reach for the wallet in his pocket. But many years of ninja experience made him accustomed to endure everything, and temporarily suppressed this idea. He decided to follow Xia Yan's instructions and take all the reward card packs after finishing the tutorial to see what happens. So he followed Xia Yan's instructions and clicked the tutorial option on the interface with his finger. The next moment, the entire interface was like broken glass, turning into fragments and slowly disappearing in the air. Amid the melodious music, a yellow scroll in the style of ukiyo-e slowly unfolded in front of him, starting from landscape paintings of mountains and rivers, to genre paintings depicting secular life in the Warring States period. The picture finally focused on a dilapidated farmhouse, and the style of painting gradually shifted from ukiyo-e to reality. A thin and short boy with a pointed face and monkey cheeks, carrying a small bag, looked back at the dilapidated house behind him, and finally chose to leave quietly. At the same time, a few lines of text gradually emerged in the blank space of the picture. Kinoshita Tokakairo, who was born in a farm family in Aurine Kimura, ran away from home when he was a teenager because of his disagreement with his adopted father. Kaku Amino, who was rubbing his hands and preparing to start playing cards, was confused by the picture in front of him. Why do you start telling stories in your teaching mode, Xia Yan? He had also seen the images that Xia Yan showed to his students, so he was not unfamiliar with this story format. Xia Yan smiled and explained, "It's just to make the tutorial a little more interesting." "I see." Kaku Amino responded, but he didn't have time to say more, because the story image in front of him was still developing. Since it was just a white color to the tutorial, Xia Yan did not dare to benchmark some 3 masterpieces in his previous life, which make people watch an hour of cutscenes at the beginning. Instead, he used montage techniques to capture important fragments of the protagonist Kinoshita Tokakairo's life, supplemented by text commentary, and quickly explained the background of the story. During the journey, Tokakairo sometimes sold needles and sometimes worked as a handyman beside the wild samurai. Gradually, he made up his mind to become a samurai, although he once became a retainer of Matsushita Kabiya, a general under Imijawa Yoshimoto. He was ostracized by his colleagues and had no choice but to leave. Finally, he returned to his hometown Aori and worked as a handyman in the Oda family. With the help of the fast-moving pictures and the commentary text, Koichiko quickly had a general understanding and recognition of this young man named Kinoshita Tokakairo. In short, he began to feel involved. Soon, another important character, Tokakairo's Lord Oda Nobunaga, also appeared. "Monkey, bring me the straw sandals." As the first line of the story sounded, Fujiyoshiro's life began to change drastically. Have you ever played Taiko Rishiden? Chapter 55. Taiko's Aspiration. Although Kinoshita Tokakairo only did some small things like getting shoes for his Lord Oda Nobunaga, but because he was serious about his work and was smart, Nobunaga gradually discovered his talent and promoted him to a samurai. Tokakairo, who achieved his wish and became a samurai, did not stop there. He set a great ambition to stand out, to make his colleagues who looked down on his background regret it, to marry Miss Ningning, whom he had admired for a long time, and even to become the lord of a country and a city. Aiko Umino, who has devoted himself to this story, also sincerely hopes that Tokakairo can succeed. However, the road to success is naturally not smooth. The first mission that Tokakairo performed after becoming a samurai was the biggest crisis since he was born. He was sent to purchase military rations, and he was stopped by a group of bandits halfway with a lot of money on him. Although Aiko Umino wanted to complain about why he had to buy military rations alone, the tense plot left him no time to think about it. These bandits were big and strong, like the guest appearance of the Akimichi clan, holding 2 big axes in their hands, and they looked like they were not easy to mess with. Aikaku Umino couldn't help but sweat for the short and thin Fujikaikairo. However, Fujikaikairo, who was always slick, did not choose to hand over money to buy his life, but drew his samurai sword tremblingly. In this tense situation, Aikaku Umino's heart was also lifted. Seeing that Fujikaikairo did not surrender obediently, the bandit leader stepped forward with his axe, grinning and said, "It seems that we can't reach a consensus, then there is only one way to solve it." Fujikaikairo also nodded tremblingly, holding the samurai sword in his hand tightly. The next moment, the two suddenly shouted at the same time, "Duel!" Aikaku Umino. Before he could react to what was happening, he saw the projection began to enlarge, and soon Fujikaikairo's shadow overlapped with his own, and the bandit leader actually appeared directly in front of him. Then a stack of keening cards appeared on the table to his right, and 5 cards flew out from the top and appeared in front of him. The same happened to the bandit leader on the opposite side, but he still couldn't bear to put down his axe. Why are they playing cards all of a sudden? Aikaku was confused. Because Fujikaikairo's story was so interesting and he was so immersed in the story, he forgot that he was actually playing the tutorial mode of keening cards. He was a little caught off guard. But even so, this turn was too abrupt. Why were they so tense just now, but now they are playing cards so friendly? "Teacher. The game has started." Xia Yan saw that the teacher didn't move, so he reminded him. Oh, Aikaku finally reacted and played a ninja card according to the tutorial. "Senjukawaruma, come and join me." A projection of a small ninja appeared on the table, and it was indeed much smaller than before. Although it lacks courage, it is more interesting to play games. But Aikaku didn't look closely, instead he turned his head and complained to Xia Yan with a speechless face. "You played the cards too suddenly, didn't you?" Xia Yan shrugged. "Teacher, you can think of playing cards as them commanding their subordinates or hired ninjas to fight. Well, this is indeed barely reasonable." Aikaku also knew that this was just a tutorial and he couldn't ask for too much, so he began to concentrate on the card game in front of him. Xia Yan's tutorial was very detailed, with detailed explanations for each step, teaching players how to play this game step by step. It made Aikaku Umino feel like a 3-year-old child. And although the bandit leader looked awesome, he was the opponent of the first level of the tutorial after all, so his strength was naturally not very good. Aikaku Umino easily defeated him after a few rounds. Then there was a clang. The axe fell to the ground. Ah, how could I lose? The bandit leader showed an incredible expression, suddenly vomited 3 pounds of blood and fell to the table and died, and then turned into ashes. Ikaku Umano on the opposite side was stunned. It took him a long time to react. Fuck. Why do you vomit blood and die if you lose a card game? So Keening card is such a terrible game. What kind of worldview is this? Xia Yan explained on the side. The ninjas under his command defeated the bandits, so naturally they will not let the bandit leader continue to live. Ikaku was speechless. Just as he won, the plot began to develop. When the plot projection reappeared, the bandits had fallen to the ground, and Fuinjutsu also embarked on his journey again. Not long after, he finally arrived at the place to buy food safely, and thought he could finally complete the task. Unexpectedly, the store owner bullied him because he was young and unfamiliar, and temporarily raised the price. With the money Fuinjutsu carried, he could not buy enough military rations. The two argued. Just when Ikaku was waiting to see how Fuinjutsu would solve this problem with his intelligence, the shop owner suddenly waved a huge abacus and grinned. It seems that we can't reach a consensus, so there is only one way to solve it: duel. To wonder the speechless gaze of Ikaku, a fierce ninja duel began again. I can understand the game just now, but why do they suddenly play cards in the middle of a business talk? Xia Yan spread his hands and said, you can regard playing cards as their verbal confrontation. This is too far-fetched. Ikaku muttered helplessly, but still chose to continue the game. After a few rounds, there was a clang. The abacus fell to the ground. Ah, how could I lose? The shop owner showed an incredible expression, suddenly vomited 3 pounds of blood and fell on the table and died, and then turned into ashes. Ikaku Umano slammed the table and stood up. Hey! What happened to the verbal confrontation we agreed on? Why is this shop owner dead too? What about buying food? Xia Yan began to ponder again. How can he explain to his teacher that verbal confrontation can also be fatal in this world without flirting? Scholar Ikaku, who didn't wait for Xia Yan's answer, saw that the plot began to develop again, so he had no choice but to sit down and continue watching. Fuinjutsu, who bought a large amount of military rations without spending a penny, quickly won the appreciation of Nobunaga. Then a battle called the Battle of Okazama soon took place. When Ikaku Umano saw Fuinjutsu and the enemy samurai playing cards in front of the battle, he was already numb. Fortunately, the plot was wonderful, and Oda Nobunaga, the Storm of Awarin, also left a deep impression on Ikaku. Ikaku Umano's mentality has changed from playing the tutorial with the plot to watching the plot with the tutorial. Later, in order to insert the opportunity to play cards, Xia Yan even intensified it. In the Minnow attack, in order to build a city in one night, Fuinjutsu asked his childhood friend for help, but the other party took out a deck of cards. In order to recruit the genius military handway Takenaka, Fuinjutsu visited him 3 times, but as expected, the other party also took out a deck of cards. After the war, due to Fuinjutsu's achievements, Nobunaga betrothed Asano Nagekasu's adopted daughter Ningning to him. But unexpectedly, on the wedding night, Ningning, who was shy on the bed, lifted the quilt and took out a deck of cards. At this time, Ikaku Umano turned his head and found that Xia Yan had slipped away without knowing when. With Fuinjutsu's rapid progress in his career, Ikaku Umano gradually entered the state, no longer entangled in the reason for playing cards, and turned into a machine that played cards ruthlessly. It is better to say that this world where everything can be solved by playing cards makes Ikaku a little envious. At the same time, every time he passes a level, the game will give him a card pack as a reward. There are many useful cards in it, which can replace the impractical cards in the basic deck. Ikaku, who felt that he was getting stronger just like Fuinjutsu, became more and more devoted to playing the game. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. As the plot progressed rapidly, an event called the Honoji incident occurred. Nobunaga, who had been mentioned a lot before and whom Ikaku had a good impression of, actually died in this rebellion. This made him confused again. Why would he be stacked even when completing a tutorial? What made him even more speechless was that after Fuinjutsu avenged his lord and was paying tribute to his lord at the ruins of Honoji Temple, he discovered that Nobunaga's soul remained in the world because of his grudge, and he wanted to transform into the real Sixth Heaven Demon King to destroy the world. Why did the plot suddenly become mysterious? Fuinjutsu's persuasion was fruitless, and he shed 2 lines of tears. He could only slowly draw out his samurai sword. Lord Nobunaga, it seems that we can't reach a consensus, so there is only one way to solve it. Chapter 56. Fancy forced Krypton. Victory and defeat are common in the military. Players, please try again. When this line of text appeared on the interface, Ikaku Umano slumped in his chair, looking at the grinning Demon King Nobunaga opposite him, feeling a deep sense of powerlessness. Lost again. And lost 5 games in a row. How is the difficulty of this tutorial designed? It's obviously unreasonable. Those opponents were so easy to deal with just now. Why did the difficulty increase so much all of a sudden? It's not an opponent that a novice with an ordinary deck can defeat. There is obviously only one way to defeat this Demon King Nobunaga. Ikaku Umano subconsciously looked at the coin slot on the table. No. He shook his head violently, knowing very well that this was Xia Yan's purpose. Forcing everyone to buy card packs to become stronger through unreasonable difficulty spans. This guy is too dark. However, Xia Yan still underestimated the endurance of us ninjas. Anyway, this tutorial has been played for more than half, and the card packs have been almost taken, so let's just end it here. Such thoughts came to Ikaku Umano's mind. However, at this moment, perhaps because he had not made any movement for too long, the Demon King Nobunaga, who was sitting opposite him, suddenly pulled out a phantom with the same appearance as Nobunaga before, and looked at him with a painful face. Monkey, save me, Lord Nobunaga. X2. Not only the phantom of Fujikai Kairo, but also Kuno Ikaku couldn't help but stand up and shout. Because the voice was so loud, the trio at the bar looked over. Xia Yan's mouth corners still had a funny arc. Kuno Ikaku couldn't help but blush, and sat back awkwardly. In his heart, he secretly cursed Xia Yan, this kid, for being so shameless. What kind of new blackmail method is this? If you don't pay, I will make your favorite characters have no reincarnation. Was it for this purpose that Nobunaga was given so much space before? I paid, is it not okay if I paid? Kuno Ikaku had tears in his eyes, looking at the painful phantom of Nobunaga opposite, and gave in helplessly. I felt wronged in my heart. He pulled out a bulging wallet from his bosom, thought for a moment, and took out 4 50-tael coins from it, and put them into the coin slot one by one with some pain. He just heard Xia Yan say that it seemed that a rare card would appear after 10 consecutive draws. Although he didn't understand the difference in the rarity of cards, rare sounded like it should be quite powerful. Every time he put in a coin, Ikaku Umano heard the crisp sound of gold coins colliding in a game console, and at the same time, the number next to the gold coin pattern in the upper right corner of the interface was constantly increasing. 200 taels, enough to buy 3 bowls of ramen, Ikaku Umano muttered softly. If Hailey knew that I was spending money like this, he would definitely be angry. He shook his head helplessly, thinking that he would just treat it as a show of support for Xia Yan. Anyway, there are 5 cards in a card pack, and 10 consecutive draws of 50 cards. There'll definitely be some good things to draw, plus the guaranteed rare card. He will definitely be able to defeat the Demon King Nobunaga. After thinking it over, Ikaku opened the store interface, took a deep breath, and pressed hard on the option of 10 consecutive draws. After a while, when Ikaku came to his senses, he found that the wallet in his hand had been deflated. He opened it and saw that it was empty. Where was the money? Although he still remembered how he put all the money into the machine, and even went to the bar to exchange the banknotes for coins when the coins were used up, Ikaku always felt that it lacked reality. How could his pocket money for several months disappear? It felt like his wallet had been directly attacked and was cleared in an instant. Xia Yan came back and saw the teacher's look. He was afraid that he would ask for a refund, so he said, "Teacher, think about it in a positive way. Your money is not really spent, but it stays with you in a different way. And these cards can be traded with others, so if you just drew a precious card, you might be able to make a profit." Yes, in order to reduce the resistance of the residents of the ninja world to virtual cards, Xia Yan did not copy the pitfall setting of electronic card games such as Hearthstone, where cards cannot be traded. Instead, he imitated the physical collectible card games such as Yu-Gi-Oh!, allowing players to trade their cards with others at will. In this way, these players who are new to Keenan will not feel that they have bought a bunch of air. And players with limited money can also use less money to get a good deck of cards. Keenan cards can also gain more audiences. Of course, since the trading of cards requires the use of Keenan game consoles, the tavern will also make a lot of money by taking a cut. Xia Yan thought that this would comfort Teacher Ikaku. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, Teacher Ikaku smiled bitterly and opened the card library for Xia Yan to see. a blue sky and white clouds. Unfortunately, it is difficult to feel relaxed and happy when this scene appears in the card library. Haha, I later read the instructions and found out that the rare items given by the 10 consecutive draws are not rare at all, and there are 2 rarity levels, epic and legendary. If I had known, I would have just bought the gift pack. I always thought that I would stop after getting something good, but in the end I spent more money and got nothing. After hearing this, Xia Yan couldn't help but take 2 steps back and keep a distance from the teacher. How unlucky is this guy? Although Xia Yan lowered the probability of epic and legendary cards because the cards can be traded, he didn't even introduce the legendary mechanism of at least 1 orange in 40 packs. But it's too miserable not to have a purple card, right? Teacher, are you sure you didn't step on anything when you went out today? Fortunately, Xia Yan is not without preparation for such players with extremely bad luck. He clicked on a recharge reward activity option in the corner of the store interface for the teacher. The pop-up window showed that starting with 6 tails for Might Guy, every time you top up a certain amount, the game will give out corresponding rewards, such as limited cards, card packs, and even special skins. When Ikaku saw that Natsuhiko received a purple framed anti-demon ninja, a Saki core from the achievement reward for topping up 1000 tails, his eyes finally brightened up. It was not easy, he finally saw the appearance of an epic card. But there is only 1 epic card, will I still be unable to defeat the Demon King Nobunaga? Ikaku was still a little uneasy. Teacher, the strength of a card is not determined entirely by its rarity, but by its specific effects and the player's use of the card. He pointed to the anti-demon ninja, a Saki core, and said, for example, this card can return cards from the opponent's graveyard to the opponent's deck. It is usually useless, but it can play a powerful role against the demon deck of Demon King Nobunaga, who treats graveyard cards as resources. Ikaku also understood it immediately after hearing it. This card is a natural counter to Demon King Nobunaga. As expected, there is no strongest card, only the strongest duelist. But he vaguely realized that Xia Yan made Demon King Nobunaga so difficult to beat, and put a card that restrained Demon King Nobunaga in the recharge reward of 1000 tails, which always felt a bit wrong. He didn't think much, added this card to his deck, and challenged Demon King Nobunaga again. Sure enough, with the help of a Saki, Ikaku easily defeated Demon King Nobunaga. The Tamenin is awesome. The teacher was so happy that he couldn't help but praise him. However, his happiness didn't last long. The fallen Demon King Nobunaga didn't disappear like the other enemies, but instead began to emit a stronger aura. Then he resurrected and stood up. After a cool transformation animation, his appearance became even more hideous and terrifying. Not only that, the resurrected Demon King Nobunaga grinned and said something that made Ikaku despair. Haha, monkey, I can perform this transformation 3 more times, Xia Yan beside him also said at the right time. Teacher, this Demon King Nobunaga in the second state cannot be defeated with just a such, but as long as you collect a Sakura with a recharge reward of 2500 tails, and Mizuki Akaike's with a recharge reward of 5000 tails, and activate the special effects of the 3 demon ninjas, there is still a chance to win. But before he could finish, Ikaku had turned his head expressionlessly to look at Xia Yan, and said, get out. Okay. Knowing that he couldn't squeeze more money out of the teacher for the time being, Xia Yan left Ikaku's side smoothly. Anyway, a new customer happened to come. Today's update, I have to sort out the subsequent outline and write a detailed outline. Chapter 57 Skin a day. I add 2 more glasses of beer here. Yes, it's coming right up. Behind that bar, Mike Dye was busy preparing the drinks ordered by the guests. As time went by, many guests came to the tavern one after another. Even Xia Yan and Kushina played the role of waiters, carrying trays to deliver drinks to the guests. Although many guests came, Xia Yan's expression was a little speechless. Because these so-called guests were all very familiar. Over at the game machine area, the Chinese teacher, math teacher, code teacher and other ninja school teachers were occupying a machine each, playing the tutorial mode like children. There was no sign of their disdain for keening cards when they were in ninja school. Although they sneaked into the tavern one by one just now, they still felt very embarrassed when they found that it was full of other teachers. But when more people walk on the road, it becomes a road. And when more people die socially, no one dies socially. That's why they can play keening cards so comfortably now. However, Mr. Ikaku was still somewhat dissatisfied with this group of guys, wandering around them like a ghost. Sometimes he scolded them for saying no, but their bodies were honest. Sometimes he felt that he couldn't be the only one unlucky, and kept encouraging everyone to play that tutorial mode and open the pack. As a result, it wasn't long before he was hit by the purple and orange light that appeared when everyone opened the pack, and he squatted aside and drew circles. Xia Yan couldn't help but call Kushina to point at him and said, "Look at that person, he looks like a dog." In addition to the teachers, even the auntie from the library sat at the bar, drank a few glasses of wine, and was flirting with the school's doorman, Mr. Clean, with a flushed face. Xia Yan was a little worried that someone might die tonight. Finally, even Master Baiwako came. At this time, he was pulling Xia Yan to chat, complaining that he didn't even notify him when the tavern opened. After all, this Keenan tavern has a cooperative relationship with the ninja school, so she had to come and watch it. Looking at the familiar faces in the tavern, Xia Yan felt that this place seemed to be reserved by the ninja school. It doesn't feel like a pub at all. At this moment, Baiwako had just finished complaining, and then looked around the layout of the pub, frowning slightly, and finally couldn't help asking Xia Yan, "Xia Yan, where did you find someone to decorate it? Why does it look so old-fashioned?" Being called old-fashioned by someone with an old-fashioned personality like her, it can be seen how monotonous and boring the decoration of this pub is. The first impression of a pub is very important. Money can't be saved in these places. Otherwise, I can help you find someone to decorate it. Lady Baiwako said enthusiastically like an aunt from the neighborhood committee. Xia Yan smiled slightly. "No need, Lord Baiwako. I think this decoration style is very suitable for this pub." Seeing Baiwako's expression of doubting his aesthetics, Xia Yan didn't explain, but just stood up and said, "As for the reason, Lord Baiwako, come with me and you will know." Baiwako was also a little curious when she heard it, and followed Xia Yan to a strange machine next to the door. Baiwako touched the outer shell of the machine with her hand, and after a brief comparison, she found that this machine looked different from other Keenan game machines. In fact, to be honest, the appearance of this machine is actually a bit like the old-fashioned coin-operated jukebox that Xia Yan had in his previous life. It even has the function of ordering songs. But that is just a supplement, it has a more important function. After Baiwako looked at it, Xia Yan put his hand on the round device on the top of the machine and began to inject chakra. Like the Keenan game machine, this machine quickly projected an interface. Then Baiwako saw that it was densely packed with many text options. There are options for various countries such as Land of Fire, Land of Water, Land of Wind, and so on. There are options for natural environments such as forest, grassland, ocean, and so on. There are also inexplicable options such as Western, Industrial, Cyberpunk, Hearthstone, Death, Break the Cauldron, Moonlight, and so on. She couldn't help but ask curiously. Xia Yan still had a damn Riddleman smile on his face, and casually clicked on the option of Rain Country. The next moment, the whole machine began to vibrate slightly. Then Baiwako felt a wave of chakra waves spreading out from the machine. The walls and floors around the tavern began to emerge with complicated and obscure rooms, which were connected to each other to form a complete magic circle. The whole tavern then changed drastically. In the stunned eyes of everyone, the walls around were made of steel and stone, the bar tables and chairs became a little old and damp, and a large number of metal pipes appeared on the ceiling and walls. The whole tavern had a more depressing and gloomy atmosphere. Even Baiwako walked to the window and looked out, and was surprised to see that the streets of Konoha had disappeared. At this time, there were steel towers outside the window, and the surface of the towers was covered with winding drainage pipes, dotted with sporadic neon lights and strange lightning rods. In addition, there was only a grey sky and rain that seemed to never stop. This scene reminded her of the name of a place. The Hidden Rain Village. Although she had never been there in person, she had heard of the unique architectural style there. Wow, what's going on? Why did this place suddenly change? I see, we must have traveled through time like Satako. The changes in the tavern naturally caused a commotion. However, most people here knew about Xia Yan's projection technique, so they reacted quickly. They all gathered around Xia Yan out of curiosity. At this time, Baiwako was touching the wall next to her. Although it looked like it was made of steel, it actually felt like the original solid wood, which gave people a sense of confusion. Then she heard Xia Yan and the people around him say, "What do you think of my decoration method? This is the Hidden Rain Village, right? I've been there before, and it's really done exactly the same. Xia Yan is really amazing, you have come up with a new trick for us. Won't the tavern look different every day?" Everyone praised Xia Yan's creativity. Baiwako looked at the real and illusory rain outside the window and said softly, It's really interesting. To be honest, she wanted to install such a machine at home. After all, with her current status, she couldn't leave the village at will. Although the scenery around the village is also good, she has long been tired of it. If there is this machine, wouldn't it be equivalent to sitting at home to enjoy the scenery of various places? The teachers around Xia Yan had the same idea, and they all urged Xia Yan to install one for them. Xia Yan has always been elegant and easygoing, so he naturally wouldn't refuse everyone. Then he opened and closed his lips a few times and slowly said the cost of this machine. The air froze for a few seconds. Then everyone pretended that nothing happened and started to clamor to see other tavern styles. Isn't it nice to get it for free? There's nothing good to see in the taverns in the rain country. Let us see something else. No problem. Xia Yan smiled and clicked on grassland. This time the changes in the tavern were even greater than before. Not only did the floor become grass, but even the walls and ceiling disappeared. For a moment, everyone seemed to be in an endless prairie. It was clearly night, but there were blue sky and white clouds above their heads, giving them a strong sense of time and space confusion. Look over there. At the reminder of the Chinese teacher, everyone looked in one direction. In the distance, there was actually a group of sheep grazing leisurely, looking lifelike. Because it was too realistic, it was difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. The physical training teacher wanted to get closer on a whim, but before Xia Yan could stop him, he bumped into the wall and realized that he was still in the tavern. That confused look caused everyone to laugh. For a moment, the whole tavern was filled with a happy atmosphere. Then everyone urged Xia Yan to continue changing other options and let them see it. Xia Yan also met everyone's requests and showed everyone a series of skins in this Keenan tavern. As the projection changed, everyone was sometimes in the kingdom of wind with dust and sand all over the sky, sometimes in the kingdom of thunder with rugged mountains and mist, sometimes on the beach, admiring the boundless sea, sometimes directly on the seabed, watching the fish swimming around. The magnificent scenes of different styles made everyone dazzled and felt eye-opening. Soon everyone was no longer satisfied with letting Xia Yan choose for them. Kaku rubbed his hands and stepped forward and said, "Xia Yan, can I choose too?" "Why not?" Xia Yan responded with a smile, and then made way. Kaku was overjoyed when he heard this, and hurried to the machine. After he thought about it carefully, he finally curiously clicked on an option Big Bird Spin, continue to sort out the outline, and resume double updates tomorrow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 58 Shape Projector. After Kaku selected the Big Bird turn bar with great interest, he looked around expectantly. However, after waiting for several seconds, there was no change in the tavern. "Hey Xia Yan, your machine is broken, come and fix it." Kaku waved to Xia Yan. But Xia Yan just smiled and pointed to the interface of the machine. Kaku looked back and saw a line of text on the interface, and his face suddenly darkened. He read it out speechlessly. "Insufficient balance, please recharge before choosing the tavern skin." As soon as the voice fell, the atmosphere in the tavern suddenly cooled down. Xia Yan, you want money for this thing again?" Kaku was full of black lines. Xia Yan tilted his head and said in surprise, "Why not? If you want to see these scenes in the past, you have to spend a lot of time, energy and money. Now, you only need to spend a little money to sit comfortably in the tavern and drink a little wine, and you can also enjoy the scenery of various places in the ninja world. Why not? Not to mention, as long as one person is willing to pay, everyone can benefit. I think it should be easy to have such injustice, a good person." And Xia Yan didn't say that these skins are divided into different levels. The higher the level, the more expensive. In his tavern in the future, the way to show off wealth is not Mr. Zhao pays the bill tonight, but Mr. Saratobi selects the legendary skin tonight, and invites everyone to travel to the moon. The teachers were speechless when they heard it. It seemed to make sense, but it felt a little wrong. And Kaku's mouth twitched when he heard it. Because he also figured out why Xia Yan decorated the tavern so monotonously and boringly. Just like the devil Nobunaga just now, he is forcing Krypton again. At this time, Xia Yan looked around again and said in a tempting tone, "Wouldn't you like to try it? After ordering, you will be the most handsome guy in the bar." And now there is a trial period discount, only 648, you can go wherever you want, but before he finished speaking, the teachers had already dispersed. Someone even secretly gave him an uncivilized gesture. Xia Yan. ... I will remember you, physical training teacher. Seeing that everyone returned to their seats. Some played cards, some drank, and no one paid any attention to him, Xia Yan felt helpless. It seems that I have overestimated everyone's spending power. Such a cool function is not even willing to pay 648, looking at the empty surroundings, Xia Yan touched his chin and muttered to himself. At this time, Baiwako came over again. Xia Yan, your machine is quite interesting. Are you also going to cooperate with a ninja school? As expected of Baiwako-sama, you can see the potential of this machine. Xia Yan gently patted the outer shell of the machine. Yes, in addition to the keening game console, this shaped projector will also be our main product in the future. In addition to adding a skin to the house, the story images I show to students in class can actually be projected with it. It is not difficult to imagine how much profit it will bring to Konoha if this machine can be popularized in the Land of Fire, or even the entire ninja world, just like opening a movie theater. Baiwako's eyes lit up when she heard it. She just wanted to hint to Xia Yan to get her one, but she didn't expect to hear that this machine has another wonderful use. Yes. Due to technological progress, film technology has developed rapidly recently and has gradually become a daily pastime for people. Even Konoha has opened several movie theaters, and she used to go to watch from time to time to kill time. However, since she saw Xia Yan's story projection, she hasn't seen it for a long time. After all, the two are completely incomparable in terms of images. The film industry only developed the technology of color films not long ago, and Xia Yan's projection technique has directly advanced to the point where it can be mistaken for the real thing. If this so-called shaped projector can be popularized, it will soon destroy the booming film industry. Thinking of this, Baiwako couldn't help but get a little excited. Who dared to sell a ticket so expensively in those cinemas? Thinking of the issue of charging, Baiwako immediately had some doubts. But Xia Yan, you just said that this machine is very expensive, right? How much does a ticket have to sell to recover the cost? Xia Yan explained. It is true that this machine has the disadvantages of high material cost and long production time, but there are solutions. As long as we continue to optimize the room formula and reduce the requirements for materials, the price will naturally come down. And simple parts can also use the work-study method I mentioned before, so that students can help make them, thereby saving a lot of time. But for some students to reach the level of production, we have to wait until at least next school year. I see. Sarutobi Baiwako heard this, although he felt a little regretful, but he was still looking forward to hearing that Xia Yan had a comprehensive plan. I even couldn't help but imagine what the scene of Konoha would be like when this machine became popular throughout the ninja world. In the following time, the teachers fell one by one in front of the second state of Demon King Nobunaga. However, they were reluctant to recharge, so they had to start fighting each other. Xia Yan was inspired and held the first Ninja School Cup Ninja competition, and also provided some card packs as rewards. He and Kushina served as referees, watching the teachers of the ninja school fighting each other in the elimination rounds, competing for the honor of the second place in the ninja school. The final result was surprising. Our principal Baiwako actually won the first Ninja School Cup championship after fighting the Dongmankin for 300 rounds in the finals. In the end, he was slightly better and won the honor of the first Ninja School Cup. And this is not the result of everyone letting the water. So much so that Xia Yan couldn't help but think that Baiwako-sama patrolled the students to fight ninja every day, and he really had ulterior motives. The night was getting deeper. Since there were classes tomorrow, the teachers didn't dare to stay too late, and left the tavern reluctantly one after another. Before leaving, they patted their chests enthusiastically, saying that they would recommend this tavern to their relatives and friends. Then they began to ask what the rules of the Get a Card Pack for New Members activity that Xia Yan just mentioned were. Xia Yan repeated helplessly. As long as the players you invite add your names in the inviter column when registering, and then play 10 games of Keenen, you can get a special card pack. When they achieve some achievements later, you will also get corresponding rewards. After everyone confirmed again and again that there were no traps in the rules, they left the tavern contentedly. Let Xia Yan start to reflect on himself. In the future, you can't kill people so obviously. Everyone began to be on guard. Sure enough, he still hasn't practiced enough, and he still needs to learn more from his predecessors in his previous life. After all the customers left, seeing that there would be no new customers come in, Xia Yan decided to close the store early. Mike Day and Krishna were opening machines one by one at this time, collecting the coins put in by the customers. Looking at the full box of coins, the two couldn't help but look at each other, a little dumbfounded. Isn't this money too easy to make? Xia Yan couldn't help but smile and shook his head when he saw this. In fact, this money is not much, but it seems a lot because it is all coins. But this is enough to show the potential of the Keening game console. After all, these teachers are employed in ninja schools and get a fixed salary. Their income can only be regarded as middle and lower level among the ninja community. The real big heads are those ninjas who are on the edge of a knife and doing various dangerous tasks outside. Most of them have the mentality of living for today and not keeping money overnight. It is not difficult to imagine how they will spend a lot of money on Keening cards if they're addicted to them. Thinking of this, Xia Yan couldn't help but curl at the corners of his mouth. Seeing this, Krishna couldn't help but pull Mike Day and said, "Uncle Dai, look at Xia Yan, he smiles so cunningly." Chapter 59. Sudden change of style. The weather began to turn cooler, and the Keenan Tavern had been open for a while. With the spontaneous publicity of the teachers of the ninja school, word spread quickly. More and more people in the village knew about this peculiar tavern. The novel and interesting Keening cards, the different scenes in the tavern every day, and the mysterious green liquid that was said to cure kidney deficiency made most people who came here linger and soon became regular customers of the tavern. With the rapid increase in the number of guests, the workload of the tavern also gradually increased. Therefore, Xia Yan asked the toolman Ikaku to help and recruit a few more employees with clean backgrounds for the tavern. After all, he and Krishna couldn't be waiters here every day. Gradually, the operation of the Keenan Tavern was on the right track. The only regret is that since the Keening cards first appeared in Konoha as student teaching aids, many people have a preconceived view that this is something for children to play. It is similar to games such as hide and seek, kick the can, and flick the rope. Although the setting of the Keening game console to reduce the projection makes it more interesting, it also deepens this impression. Two big men commanded the little people on the table to fight. The players felt good. But from the perspective of the spectators, the pictures were too beautiful to watch. However, even so, Keening cards has attracted the interest of many adults with its unprecedented gaming experience. And if you want to go to the red carpet every day to relax, your wallet can bear it, but your body can't bear it. It's just right to nourish your body by playing cards. Therefore, just like the teachers of the ninja school at the beginning, many people disdain Keening cards on the surface, but secretly they are full of good smells. Because they are embarrassed to appear in the tavern openly, they choose to do the same thing as when they usually go to the red carpet. Disguise. The final result is that although the Keenan Tavern is now overcrowded, most of the guests either wear hooded masks to hide their identities, or directly use transformation techniques to change their appearance. It seems that some shameful activities are being held here. Even the original normal guests were quickly infected and assimilated by this trend. It's like when everyone on the street is wearing masks, and there's nothing covering your mouth, you'll feel a strange sense of shame. Everyone around you is in disguise, but you're the only one who's not covered, and it feels wrong. However, what these guys don't know is that Xia Yan had set up a lot of barriers for the tavern before it opened, including a barrier that breaks illusions. This barrier is an improvement of the barrier that Xia Yan sets up in many bathhouses to detect transformation. In addition to the original function, it is also directly connected to Xia Yan's brain, and can strip off the other party's transformation disguising Xia Yan's eyes. This also means that their disguise is completely useless in blind eyes. Therefore, he also found a lot of familiar guys. Needless to say, Ikaku and other ninja school teachers, many classmates of his generation are also among them. Such as the new generation of Inu Shikachu, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi and Akimachi Chiza. What's even more outrageous is that little guy Ashuma. I don't know where he learned the transformation skills from, but he actually broke through the age alarm barrier set by Xia Yan and sneaked into the bar every night to play cards. However, Xia Yan didn't care about him because he saw that his grades didn't drop. He got in by his own ability, so why should he be driven away? And who knows when this handle might be useful in the future. Ashuma, you don't want your parents to know that you go to the Keenan Tavern every day to play cards, do you? At the same time, because everyone was using the transformation technique, they didn't know each other's identity. So Xia Yan was able to see some magical scenes. For example, Ikaku teacher asked the arrogant Ashuma for card playing skills with a smug face. The ninjas of the Shinura clan and the Uchiha clan were drinking together like good brothers. Ordinary civilian ninjas may also be respected by the ninja clan ninjas because of their superb card skills. The dream of the first generation Hokage to let everyone put aside their prejudices and be as close as a family was inadvertently realized in this Keenan tavern. It made Xia Yan think about how he should give a speech after he became successful. Friends, today I tell you that in the present and in the future, despite all the difficulties and setbacks we have suffered, I still have a dream. This dream is deeply rooted in the dream of Konoha. I dream that one day, this village will stand up and truly realize the true meaning of the will of fire. We hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal. I dream that one day, in this small tavern, the children of former civilians will be able to sit at the same table with the children of former ninjas and share that friendship of brothers and sisters. I dream that one day, all guests will be judged by their card skills instead of their identities. However, Xia Yan's imagination did not last long, and he remembered the ending of that person, and his face became a little dark again. However, what he did not expect was that this disguised friend soon underwent a terrible transformation. What made him laugh and cry was that he was the initiate. In order to let everyone see the power of various legendary cards and attract them to spend money, Xia Yan would occasionally fight with Kushina on the duel stage in the center of the tavern with various decks as a demonstration. Because of their outstanding card skills and luxurious decks, this program was very popular. They were even given very second-year nicknames. Kushina would fall to the ground every time she failed, and her red hair would suddenly fall down, leaving a long red after image. So everyone began to jokingly call her the Red Comet. And Xia Yan was gradually honored as the White Devil because of his unfathomable card skills, various methods of forcing them to play, silver hair and the white coat he often wore. After a demonstration battle that was no different from usual, Xia Yan looked at the red hair of Kushina who fell to the ground, thought of everyone's name for her, and couldn't help but gently complain. I can tell from your hairstyle that you don't know how to play cards. Your hairstyle doesn't have 4 or 5 corners and more than 3 colors, and you want to compete with me on the same stage. What he never expected was that these words were actually heard by the audience on the sidelines, and they thought they had discovered the secret of Xia Yan's strength. So the rumor that hairstyle affects card skills began to spread rapidly among the player community. As for why Xia Yan has silver curly hair, everyone discussed and came to a conclusion. That is, he has returned to his original nature and no longer needs a colorful hairstyle. After hearing everyone's inference, Xia Yan couldn't help but complain in his heart. Are you sure you were talking about playing cards, not irons? At first, everyone was just joking and didn't take it seriously. But later, there were several rumors such as my card skills improved greatly after I changed my hairstyle. I got a double yogag on the same day I dyed my hair. Everyone's hearts began to waver, and they changed their hairstyles with the idea of giving it a try. After all, they only changed their hairstyles with transformation techniques, and no one knew their true identities. There was no need to worry about social death. So soon, there were a group of guys with colorful and angular hairstyles in the tavern, who looked very good at playing cards. Some people even awakened a new hobby. They came to the tavern every day but didn't play cards, but just gathered together to study how to make their hairstyles and clothes more fancy. Even under the advice of Boss Xia Yan, they began to call themselves the Shamade tribe. But as I said just now, these guys thought that no one knew their identities, so they let themselves go. However, Xia Yan knew their identities completely. What's more interesting is that Xia Yan can even adjust the illusion-breaking effect of the barrier. Only the faces of these guys can be exposed, while the hairstyles and clothes are still kept in the Shamade style. Seeing the usually sanctimonious teachers and classmates of the same generation with colorful hair and non-mainstream clothes, Xia Yan had a hard time holding back his laughter every day. He felt that he would get sick sooner or later. Therefore, in the end, he chose not to turn on this effect all the time, for fear that he would suddenly be exposed and be hunted down by a group of angry guys. But before cancelling it, he still used the camera technique to record these images. In addition to flipping them out from time to time for fun, he also planned to give them to the descendants of these guys as gifts in the future. Such as Iruka, Shikamura, Ino, and Choji. I believe they will be very happy. After all, which child would not be interested in what his father looked like when he was young? Chapter 60a. Small Conflict. October 27, Keenan Tavern. The tavern's skin tonight is industrial style. The exposed wall bricks, concrete floor, metal tables and chairs and simple chandeliers are combined to create a rough and undecorated beauty. Boss Xia Yan sat in front of the bar as usual, holding a glass of happy water, and was teaching Might Day the self-cultivation that a waiter should have. Mr. Dai, although most of the guests come here to play cards and go to the game machines as soon as they enter the door, we cannot ignore the communication with them. We have to establish a bond with them and make them feel at home, so that the business can be done in the long run. Might Dai behind the bar said. Then how to do it specifically? Xia Yan took a sip of happy water and said, the most basic thing is that when they are playing cards, you can provide support on the side. You can say, I think you can win this game, I will support you secretly. But don't tell others. Don't forget to say this to the players on both sides, and don't favor one over the other. Might Dai has taken out a notebook and recorded it carefully. Xia Yan continued, but such polite words are far from enough. It is better to give appropriate comments according to the situation of the game. If they play well, you should say this is how the game is played. You are really a talent, my friend, it is a pleasure to watch you play cards. If the players are behind, you should say it doesn't matter. Life is bound to be unhappy, the situation is not too bad. Might Day began to look embarrassed as he memorized. Teacher Xia Yan, but I am not very good at this keening card game. I can't tell whether they play well or not. What if I say something wrong? Xia Yan shook the coke in the glass, and the corners of his mouth raised a funny arc. Wouldn't it be better that way? Playing cards without a bit of sarcasm always feels like something is missing. What? Might Day thought he heard it wrong. Oh, what I mean is, as long as you are sincere, Mr. Dai, no one will mind even if you make mistakes. Yes. As long as I am sincere, everyone will feel my enthusiasm. Might Dai clenched his notebook excitedly, and his eyes seemed to be filled with flames. Okay. I'll try it now. After that, he strode to the game console area with his notebook in hand, ready to put what Xia Yan taught him into practice. Go, let everyone feel the pain that Bob brought me in my previous life, Xia Yan muttered to himself as he looked at Might Dai's confident back. Then he chuckled and shook his head, opened the system interface, and started tonight's research work. Just like the dual disc, his keening game console also has a mechanism to take 30% of the chakra provided by the customer as a commission. Xia Yan still used this chakra on the prototype to analyze and test the runes. In addition, he has been panning for gold in the sand in the school library for 2 months, and his knowledge has also increased greatly. Therefore, Xia Yan's current sealing skills have made substantial progress, and many researches that have been stagnant for many years have made new progress. However, there are too many things to study at once, which makes Xia Yan feel a little overwhelmed. He feels that 3 shadow clones are not enough. It is really a happy trouble. In the end, Xia Yan decided to temporarily focus most of his energy on the shadow clone technique and the perception array. There is no need to say much about studying the shadow clone technique. After all, this technique is an important key to studying the essence of chakra. As for the perception array, it is because the accuracy of Xia Yan's current perception array can no longer keep up with his research needs and must be updated. In addition, its principle of sensing chakra can be regarded as a wireless communication technology, which is an indispensable cornerstone for Xia Yan to build a chakra network. After recent research, both have made some new breakthroughs. Just when Xia Yan was studying how to further simplify the structure of the perception array technique, a commotion came from the game console area, which quickly attracted his attention. He turned off the interface and turned his head to see the figure of Mighty in the center of the crowd. So his expression couldn't help but become strange. Could it be that the yin-yang technique he just taught my guy was too effective? Or is it that the residents of the ninja world have not been baptized by the internet and their tolerance for yin-yang is not high enough? He just said he would try it, and if he really tried it, he would die. But when he stood up and saw that the 2 players were actually in conflict, and my guy was just trying to dissuade them, he was relieved. Players quarreled every day, so he was not surprised. After all, in the previous life, Hearthstone, which could only send emojis, made people want to kill their opponents through the internet from time to time. Not to mention that these players were face to face, and there was no keening card that could mute them. But since my guy was handling it, Xia Yan was not in a hurry, and regarded it as training my guy's handling ability. I saw a guy with colorful hair and a very effeminate look, who was obviously transformed by the transformation technique, hiding behind my guy with an innocent face, and yelling, "Why do you lose your temper when you lose? You are too unplayable, aren't you? I was so polite just now, and I said sorry before I defeated you with the great fireball technique. Is that the tone of sorry you said?" The other party in the dispute, a black-haired young man who rarely used the transformation technique to disguise, was so angry that he wanted to rush over again. Fortunately, Mike Dive stopped him, and kept saying, "My guest, forget it, why don't you have a glass of green juice to cool down, I'll treat." At this time, Xia Yan's eyes were cast on the guy with colorful hair, and a glimmer flashed in his eyes, and he saw the other party's true identity: Saratobi Ashuma. "It's Ashuma again, the little guy messing with me." Xia Yan felt a little speechless. Speaking of it, this little guy is indeed a card-playing genius. But it's not that he is good at playing cards, but that he has learned the weirdness without a teacher. A simple sorry can raise a person's blood pressure. Look, the black-haired young man's eyes are red with anger. Oh no, that seems to be the Sharingan, so it's okay. It turns out to be the Uchiha clan again. Xia Yan understood all of a sudden. There are many customers in the tavern now, and naturally there are also people from the Uchiha clan. After all, to be honest, the game of keening cards, which is quite second year, is quite in line with their appetite, so they are quite generous. However, these customers have a shortcoming that makes Xia Yan very helpless. Most ordinary Uchiha clan members are fine. The trouble is those guys who have opened their eyes. The Uchiha clan is in charge of the police force, and they are already hated. As a result, they don't need to use the transformation technique to disguise themselves, and play cards in the tavern openly. Naturally, they will be ridiculed from time to time. But they are always proud, and of course they will not swallow their anger, so they have caused many disputes. What's more terrible is that I don't know if it's the influence of the Sharingan. These people's emotions are not very stable. They are simply paranoid. It's even more serious than Xia Yan's. As long as they lose, even if the opponent just says well done, they will think it is a mockery. So much so that several conflicts caused by them occurred before the tavern opened for a few days. Sure enough, many regulars who were watching had the same idea. It's the Uchiha clan again. They made trouble several times before. How annoying. I say just ban them from coming in here. SHH, keep your voice down, or you'll be arrested and sent to the police department. Quantitative change leads to qualitative change. Several disputes caused by the Uchiha clan made everyone's impatience reach the extreme, and the works became a little weird. Xia Yan knew it was going to be bad when he heard everyone's discussion. The Uchiha clan is all donkeys who are soft and don't take hard things. Originally, if Might Dive said a few more good words at this time, these tsunders would not bother to care and leave, and they would come back again in a few days as if nothing happened. But after being said by everyone, that guy was completely embarrassed. As expected, the young Uchiha listened to the whispers of the players around him, his face gloomy, and his double Magatama Sharingan became redder. He looked around, and in the field of vision of the Sharingan, most of the people who pointed at him were covered with a layer of chakra, obviously using transformation techniques to disguise their identities. So he tilted his mouth and sneered like a dragon king. A bunch of guys who hide their heads and show their tails, you are not qualified to evaluate our Uchiha clan. If you have the guts, tell me your name. His words angered everyone. The players were all cursing angrily. The Uchiha clan is great. My Shinura clan is not afraid of you. What a coincidence. I'm also from the Shinura clan. Yes, our Shinura clan just doesn't submit to your Uchiha clan. Hey, can't you change a ninja clan? There are already too many Shinuras here. But, I'm really from the Shinura clan. This, Chapter 61 Card Pack Compensation. Looking at the Shinura clan that appeared in the tavern like bamboo shoots after rain, Xia Yan couldn't help but have a few black lines on his forehead. How could he not know that the Shinura clan was so supportive that the entire clan's ninjas came? It's probably that even Elder Danzo is here to barely make up the number. It's obvious that everyone is just letting themselves go with the transformation technique and deliberately provoking. However, the Uchiha youth was also prepared. After a sneer, he slowly reached into his arms. Then he took out a police department certificate and opened it with a snap. Police force member Uchiha Xia Yan now suspects that you are suspicious and may be hiding spies from the enemy village. Remove the transformation technique and let me check your identities. Who do you say is suspicious? A player wearing a hooded mask that covered his face tightly shouted. Yes, we are obviously ordinary, don't abuse your power. A player with angular hair of at least 7 colors also shouted. Yes, then several other players followed suit to protest. Unfortunately, few people agreed this time, and the atmosphere in the tavern gradually became quiet. Most of the onlookers looked at each other, looking at the colorful hair and non-mainstream dresses of others, and thinking that they were also in this state. Their faces gradually became strange. They were used to seeing it and didn't think it was a big deal, but now they heard what Xia Yan said, they reacted. They looked really suspicious now. If they were walking on the street, they would definitely be checked by the police. But because of this, it would be even more impossible for them to cancel the transformation technique. Otherwise, wouldn't this place become a large-scale social death scene? It can be compared to the level of social death when being discovered by roommates in women's clothing. So Xia Yan's move really hit them in the weak spot. They never expected that they, who were just eating melons and watching the show, would actually eat the melon themselves. So everyone was silent, and some even quietly retreated and prepared to run away. Xia Yan couldn't help but sneered when he saw this. What? You're not talking anymore? Weren't you guys shouting loudly just now? Don't think you'll be fine if you don't talk. Since you don't want to remove it, I'll help you. First, you'll start. He looked at Ashuma, who had been reducing his presence, and began to walk towards him. However, after a few steps, he was stopped by a green figure. It was the blue waiter, Mike Day. He opened his hands and stood firmly in front of Xia. But his face was still a little hesitant. After all, as a 10,000-year-old genin, he always abided by the law and didn't dare to confront the police department. Get lost. Xia looked at Mike Day with contempt, obviously thinking that it would be cheap to say one more word to him. A guy who was still a genin at an old age, now he had fallen to being a waiter in a tavern, and he was not qualified to be taken seriously by him as a special genin. However, the respect, friendship, and happiness that Mike Day had received from the Keenan Tavern these days made him stand still involuntarily. His eyes became more determined. Although Xia Yan teacher often said that we should try our best to meet the requirements of every customer. But I'm sorry I can't do it this time. Mike Day looked at Xia Yan's familiar disdainful expression and said word by word. Xia Yan, who had been eating melon seeds and watching the show, saw that Mike Dai's eyes changed, as if he had made up his mind, and knew that he could not continue to watch the show. After this period of time, Xia Yan also discovered the reason why Mike Dai was so low-key despite being super strong. That is because even he himself did not know how strong he was. His identity as a 10,000-year ninja made him do low-level tasks all the time, without the opportunity to fight in actual combat. And his dressing taste and training style made people stay away from him, and he had no opportunity to communicate and learn from others. So although he practiced the 8 gates, he did not feel that he was a strong man. This also added a touch of humor to his highlight plot in the original work. He clearly said that he would open the 8 gates to buy time for Akai and others to escape, but he kicked 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen to death, and the remaining 3 fled in embarrassment. Is there anyone who delays time like you? Xia Yan probably was quite confused at the time. He didn't expect that the 7 ninja swordsmen were so vulnerable. If he had known to open the 7 gates earlier, so now Xia Yan is most afraid that Mike Dai will misjudge the situation and suddenly shout, "This is the time for me to implement the ninja way." Then all 8 gates are opened and Xia is kicked to death in 1 second. Then the remaining 59 seconds are spent thinking, this guy is so awesome, why is he so weak? So Xia Yan quickly raised his right hand. The next moment, a faint sound of snapping fingers reached everyone's ears, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. Then they heard a slightly helpless voice behind that crowd. "Dear guest, please don't disturb the interest of other guests anymore." The crowd spontaneously separated and made way for Xia Yan to walk in. Xia Yan thanked everyone for their cooperation while slowly walking towards Xia. The onlookers started to eat melons again, turned their heads and looked at Xia, looking forward to his reaction. As a result, Xia stood still, expressionless. Everyone was a little disappointed. However, what they didn't know was that it wasn't that Xia didn't want to move, but that he couldn't move at all at this moment. A drop of cold sweat slowly fell from his forehead, and his heart was cold. At the moment he heard the snap of his fingers, he felt as if several chains spread from the soles of his feet and instantly bound his whole body. Even the chakra was imprisoned in his body, and there was no way to break it. At this time, Xia Yan just walked in front of him, with a business-like smile on his face, and said, "Of course, if you can show a search warrant, I believe everyone will be very happy to cooperate with your work, police comrade." As soon as he finished speaking, Xia found that the restraints on his body suddenly disappeared completely. Just as silently as when they appeared. Even the spectators didn't notice the fact that he had been subdued, and they were still echoing Xia Yan's words. Obviously, this was that Yushin Xia Yan gave him some face. After the incident just now, Xia was like being poured with a basin of ice water, and finally calmed down. He resisted the urge to stay away from Xia Yan and looked at him deeply. He had only started playing keening cards for a few days, but he also knew that this game was invented by the young boss in front of him. He also knew that the other party had another identity, that is, the seal technique teacher of the ninja school. It is said that his attainments in the seal technique have also been recognized by the elders of the clan. This reminded him of what his grandfather said. Just like when other ninjas and our Uchiha clan meet one-on-one, the best tactic is to run away immediately. When we encounter a ninja who is good at sealing techniques, we must be careful not to fight on the opponent's home ground. As the owner of this tavern, Xia Yan didn't know how many seal techniques were set up here. The method that bound himself just now was obviously one of them. Xia, who had calmed down, knew that continuing the conflict here would not end well. He likes to pretend not to be stupid. And this Xia Yan is also right. Their police department's authority was heavily restricted. Without a search warrant, they could not do anything to this tavern that had a close cooperative relationship with the ninja school. Therefore, although he was very unwilling, Xia Yan decided to make a strategic shift. He finally looked at Xia Yan deeply, and then glanced at the onlookers with disdain, and said, "HMPH. I will remember you." Then he turned around and left the tavern. All the spectators who disguised themselves with transformation techniques looked strange. "Are you sure you can remember what we looked like?" At this time, Xia Yan clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention, and then said, "I'm sorry to trouble you all. As compensation, all guests present can get 5 free card packs." As soon as Xia Yan finished speaking, the whole tavern burst into fierce cheers. Hearing Xia Yan, who had just pushed the door out, he felt depressed, kicked a small stone away, and left indignantly. After Xia Yan distributed the card packs, the guests dispersed one after another, happily logged into the game to receive the card packs. They didn't care about the commotion just now. Sure enough, this method of distributing card packs and letting everyone pretend nothing happened also worked in the ninja world. Chapter 62. The results of sensing the array. After Xia Yan distributed the compensation card packs, the players in the tavern were happily opening the card packs. Some were still competing to see who had better luck and could get epic or legendary cards. But after the card packs were really opened, the content of the competition became much more down to earth, and it became a competition to see who drew more rare cards. In a corner of the tavern, the shamate version of Naruto was muttering quietly. "I didn't expect that Xia Yan left obediently after being told a few words by Boss Xia Yan. Something must have happened. Did you notice anything?" The shamate version of Yamanaka concentrated on thinking carefully, nodded slightly, and then began to shake his head. "I just sensed a chakra fluctuation in the tavern just now, but I don't know the specific situation. And don't call my name here, Shikaku." "Then what did you call me?" "Small-minded guy." Shikaku looked at her speechlessly, then immediately returned to the topic, stroking his chin and saying, "It seems that the two have already fought without our knowledge, and Xia Yan was at a disadvantage. It seems that our tavern owner and sealing technique teacher has set up a very powerful sealing technique barrier in this tavern. He came to this conclusion easily. Otherwise, Xia Yan would not have been able to make Xia Yan surrender so easily. Although we have the home advantage, it is also very rare. Why didn't I know that there was such a powerful guy among our peers?" He spread his hands. After all, he was not in our class before, and there was nothing special about him when he was in ninja school. Plus, sealing techniques are the type of skills that are accumulated over time, so it's early for him to come to the fore now. To be honest, this talent and background remind me of someone from the same generation as us. I just don't know if this late rising silver moon can compete with the golden little sun. He felt that he had said something very interesting, but he didn't get a response from Shikaku, so he turned his head curiously. Then he saw Shikaku still frowning, with a face full of deep thought. With the friendship between the two of them that they would change positions as soon as they slapped their butts, he knew that Shikaku had not figured out something. So he asked, "Are there any other questions about what happened just now?" Shikaku shook his head and said, "No, it's just that what happened just now made me think of other questions." "Oh, what?" "Since the sealing technique ninja is so powerful at home, how did the Uzumaki clan get exterminated back then?" Why are your thoughts so jumpy? And that matter is also very sensitive in Konoha, so it's better not to delve into it. Just when he was about to advise Shikaku not to think too much, a skinny guy who was as thin as a rock came over waving his hands and shouted loudly, "Here, Shikaku, come and open the packs quickly, let's see who gets more rare cards." He and Shikaku glared at each other and put their fingers in front of their lips. "Mr. Dim, shush." "I'm sorry, Mr. Xia Yan, I couldn't stop that guest from messing around." Mike Dai, who was wiping the cups behind that bar, was a little dejected, regretting that he had hesitated just now. Xia Yan, who was sitting in front of the bar, waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter, that guy was holding the banner of the police department, normal people would hesitate. But speaking of which, from your expression just now, Mr. Dai, it seems that you were going to use some tricks." Mike Dai's eyes widened. "Teacher Xia Yan, did you see that too?" "Of course I saw it, your eyes were full of fire at the time." Mike Dai put down the clean cups and smiled bigly. "I'm sorry to make you laugh, just now I was impulsive and actually thought that I could use the forbidden technique 8 gates of ninjutsu that I have practiced for nearly 20 years to deal with the genius of the Uchiha clan. It was really a fantasy." No, yours was not a fantasy, it was a fantasy." Xia Yan complained in his heart, and felt that he had to correct Mike Dai's self-perception, otherwise someone would be killed sooner or later. "Mr. Dai, after all, we are doing business with an open door. We value peace and harmony. It is better not to use force until the last moment. More importantly, you may not think so, but in fact, you are very strong. So you should use forbidden techniques sparingly, me." "Very strong." Mike Dai was amused, but his smile soon turned bitter. "Teacher Xia Yan, you don't have to comfort me. If I was really strong, I wouldn't be at Genin until now." Xia Yan was also a little confused about this. "Mr. Dai, you haven't participated in the tuning exam. If he participated, he should be able to know his strength easily." "I want to participate every year." Mike Dai looked bitter, but everyone said that I was too weak and would only hold back, and no one was willing to team up with me. Xia Yan. ... He actually forgot that under normal circumstances, the tuning exam requires a group of 3 to participate. Mike Dai usually weighs a lot of weights, and he really doesn't show extraordinary strength. Coupled with his eye-catching appearance, naturally no one wants to team up with him. Looking at Mike Dai like this, he probably won't refute if someone says he is weak. He will probably just say thank you for your support, and then go home to practice hard. As a result, if you don't participate in the tuning exam, you can't know your strength. Not knowing your own strength will lead to not being able to participate in the tuning exam. Fall. This is a dead cycle. It's just like the 10-mile sword god who didn't find that plot point when playing the fairy sword and could only level up blindly. If the 3rd-generation old man knew that Uchiha-level combat power could not be discovered because of a small exam rule, he would definitely be so angry that he would vomit blood. What's wrong with this village? It's always the civilian ninjas who suffer. Xia Yan fell into deep thought. This must be a problem with the system. Xia Yan pondered for a moment. To let my guy know his strength, the easiest way is naturally to fight him. But with his current self-awareness, Xia Yan is worried that he will be kicked to death by him. In order to avoid such a funny way of dying, Xia Yan decided to take a roundabout route. So he smiled and said to Mike Dai, "Mr. Dai, are you free in a few days? I have a small task to entrust to you. Goodbye, Mr. Xia Yan. Goodbye, don't hang around on the way home." Yes, the next afternoon, Xia Yan had just got off work and said hello to the students who were also going home from school, and walked out of the ninja school. As soon as he walked out of the school gate, his eyebrows raised slightly. But he quickly restrained his emotions, and his footsteps did not stop. He walked towards the tavern as usual. Not long after, when he turned into an alley and walked a few steps, he was blocked by a familiar figure. Xia Yan. When Xia Yan saw the other person's appearance clearly, his head hurt. It felt that this guy's name was really correct. It's really hard to get rid of it once it gets on your body. At this time, Xia Yan leaned against the wall of the alley, his hands crossed in front of his chest, his eyes closed, and his face was cold. It seemed that he had expected Xia Yan to take this road, so he was waiting here. But what he didn't know was that Xia Yan had recently made new achievements in the research of the perception array. That is a new technique called small map technique. As the name suggests, its function is to display all creatures with chakra within a radius of 100 meters of Xia Yan in the small map window on the interface. It can be said to be a bankrupt version of Kikira's heart eye. In fact, Xia Yan had the idea of this technique a long time ago. However, at the time, Because he did not have a deep understanding of that perception array, and there was no way to solve the problem of serious blue consumption in maintaining this technique, he had to put it aside for the time being. Now that the conditions are ripe, he picked it up from the waste paper pile again. In order to solve the disadvantage of serious blue consumption, Xia Yan did not convert it into the form of rune ninjutsu and integrate it into the chakra intelligent brain. Instead, he chose to miniaturize the perception array and connect it to the chakra intelligent brain in the form of external hardware. Although Xia Yan could not flexibly control this technique with his own chakra, he could use external chakra capacitors to power it, achieving a 24-hour uninterrupted monitoring effect. Moreover, when a creature with a large amount of chakra and unmarked approaches, this technique will also give him an alarm. So Xia Yan knew that someone had been following him since he left school. And he also knew that when that person was sure that he was going to walk into this alley, he quickly took a detour and ran in front of him to wait, thus creating the illusion of waiting for a long time. Therefore, Xia Yan felt nothing in his heart at this time, and even wanted to laugh. Is this the Uchiha clan who is good at pretending to escape? Love it. You will never know how much effort they have put in behind the scenes to pretend. Xia Yan didn't know that Xia Yan had seen through everything, and was still acting according to the script. The corners of his mouth raised a playful arc. He stood up nonchalantly, took out a kunai and kept throwing and catching it, saying, "I have been waiting for you here for a long time, Xia Yan." No, you haven't. Chapter 63 Basic Knowledge of Duelists. Hearing Uchiha say, "I've been waiting for you here for a long time," Xia Yan was speechless. You stood there for less than 10 seconds, right? If that's considered a long time, he began to worry about Uchiha's married life. Uchiha didn't see the reaction he wanted on Xia Yan's face, and was a little disappointed. But he had also thought about this possibility, so he prepared a plan B. He then sneered. "It seems that you also expected my appearance. Very good, you are worthy at being the person who narrowly defeated me yesterday with the help of the tavern's barrier." Sure enough, he came here because of what happened yesterday, Xia Yan sighed helplessly. Yesterday was just a small dispute between players. Why are you still brooding over it, officer? How about I give you 3 card packs and we can just pretend nothing happened? Which theme of the card packs is that? No. Xia Yan was almost misled by Xia Yan, but he quickly came to his senses and said seriously, "I forgot about that a long time ago. I came to you today to compete with you. Anyway, I lost to you yesterday. If we can't win back, it will damage the reputation of our Uchiha clan." Reputation? Xia Yan looked strange. If this is how you maintain your reputation, it's no wonder that the reputation of the Uchiha clan is getting worse and worse. Xia Yan scratched his head and said, "Forget it. You also said that I had the home advantage and won unfairly. As for the reputation of the Uchiha clan, no one else knows it anyway, I know it in my heart." Xia Yan said word by word. Seeing this, Xia Yan knew that the guy in front of him was not someone who could be easily dismissed with 3 card packs. So he sighed and said slowly, "I know." Then he added with some entanglement, "The 10 card packs, I told you it's not the card packs." Xia Yan, who had a serious face, suddenly lost his composure. "Can you please stop talking about the game cards?" However, he soon realized his loss of composure and coughed twice and said, "Anyway, if you don't agree, I won't give up." Xia Yan looked solemn. Even the strategy of giving away card packs didn't work. It seems that this guy has made up his mind. In that case, I will play with you. Xia Yan finally agreed to Xia Yan's unreasonable request reluctantly. After all, there will definitely be a lot of people causing trouble in the tavern in the future. If he appears too weak now, this kind of thing will never end. Xia Yan was overjoyed when he heard this, and was about to speak when he was interrupted by Xia Yan. "Don't be too happy yet." Xia Yan raised his palm and said, "We've agreed in advance that as long as we have a sparring match, you won't be entangled anymore, right? After I defeat you, your brother won't come to avenge you. After I beat your brother, your father will come again. Then there's grandpa, the clan leader, the clan elders. Finally, tell me that your ancestor Uchiha Madara is not dead yet." Xia Yan's face became darker and darker, and he couldn't help but interrupted. "What novels do you usually read? Not to mention that you don't have a home advantage here, I can't lose to you. Take a step back, even if I lose to you, it's my own business. I will only practice hard from the beginning and challenge you when I'm sure. So as long as you don't lose on purpose, no one will bother you for a long time." "What the hell is another challenge?" Although Xia Yan was not very satisfied with his answer, he could barely accept it, so he nodded and said, "The space here is too small, not enough for the two of us to toss around, let's change places first." After a while, the two came to a remote grove nearby that was very suitable for field battles. "Let's do it here." Xia Yan stopped. Xia Yan looked around, and finally glanced at a jujube tree in the distance, and nodded. Xia Yan said with a proud face, "Let me make it clear first, I am completely different from yesterday. Without the home advantage, you will lose immediately if you don't fight seriously." "Oh, then let's get started quickly, I'm in a hurry to go back to open the store." Xia Yan said uninterested. Xia Yan's forehead had a few more blue veins. "Don't get angry, this is just Yushin Xia Yan's psychological warfare." He comforted himself and then showed a calm smile. "Okay, then let's fight quickly, you can fight directly when you're ready. In that case, I won't be polite." Xia Yan pulled away while thinking about how to deal with this meaningless battle. As the saying goes, intelligence is the life of a ninja. He didn't intend to expose too much of his ability for such a trivial matter. But if he let him go too much, he might not be able to deliver. So why not just use this guy to test the tactic? After Xia Yan finished his calculations and had just created enough a distance, he stopped and looked at the other party. Seeing this, Xia Yan knew that the duel had finally begun, and a smile of fighting spirit appeared on his face. "Let me see the true strength of the ceiling ninja." "As you wish." Xia Yan also smiled and replied. After that, he stretched out his left hand, and under Xia Yan's vigilant eyes, he touched his left wrist with his right hand. A string of runes appeared on it, and then white smoke exploded. After the smoke dissipated, a strange machine appeared on Xia Yan's wrist. Xia Yan, who was originally vigilant on the opposite side, suddenly had an ominous premonition. Because he felt that the thing looked familiar. Could it be, when Xia Yan drew 5 cards from the strange machine, Xia Yan knew that his ominous premonition had come true. Jewel disc. Yushin Xia Yan was wearing a jewel disc. Xia knew what it was because there was also a model of a jewel disc on display in the tavern, which was said to be a portable keening game console that would be released in the future. He thought it looked cool at first sight and had planned to buy one as soon as it was released, so he was not unfamiliar with it. However, no matter how much he liked the jewel disc, he was still a little annoyed when he saw it appear in Xia Yan's hand during the battle. Wait. The sparring I'm talking about is not keening cards. How long is this guy going to play keening jokes? Not to mention that I don't even have a jewel disc or a deck. Xia Yan, who was checking his hand, sneered when he heard this. Stupid guy, carrying a jewel disc and a deck is basic common sense for a duelist. What world is this common sense from? Xia complained fiercely. Since you don't even have a deck, I'll attack first and draw a card. Xia Yan pulled out a card from the jewel disc, glanced at it and laughed. It seems that even the ancestors of the Uchiha clan can't stand your stupidity. First, I'm going to ambush a card, and then, he held a card in his right hand and raised it high. Tough, invincible, strongest, crushing, jake-breaking, cheering. Come out, the lone legend, the Xia of the ninja world, Uchiha. What? In the astonished eyes of Xia Yan, Xia Yan slammed the card hard on the jewel disc. The next moment, an overwhelming sea of fire appeared out of thin air, instantly submerging the entire forest. Xia Yan, who was still confused, also reacted at this time and jumped back to avoid the invasion of the sea of fire. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. The flames in front of him seemed to have no temperature at all. So he tentatively stretched his hand into the sea of fire, and sure enough, he was unharmed. Projection technique. He quickly thought of this possibility. It seems that in addition to the gajuning cards and the tavern skin, the projection technique can also be used in actual combat. After Xia Yan lost yesterday, he naturally investigated Xia Yan's background, so he also knew about the projection technique. But before he had time to think about it, he heard Xia Yan at the other end of the sea of fire gently uttered, "Direct attack." As soon as the voice fell, a channel was torn out of the sea of fire, and then began to dissipate in the void. A figure that Xia Yan was very familiar with was rushing towards him at high speed. Chapter 64. Do you want to dance too? As the figure approached quickly, his true appearance was revealed. He was wearing a red layered armor, had long spiky hair, and was handsome. A pair of 3 Magatama Sharingan left 2 bloody streams along the way. It was the ancestor of their Uchiha clan, the legendary ninja, Uchiha. But at this time, Xia Yan did not feel a sense of relief to see his idol, but was filled with anger. Xia Yan, you succeeded in angering me. After all, the real Uchiha is no longer alive. The Uchiha in front of him was obviously the projection generated by the bastard using the dual disc. Although ninjas have always used every possible means in battle, using transformation or illusion to become the enemy's relatives and friends to disrupt the opponent is a common tactic. But he did not expect that Xia Yan would be so bold as to project the person in front of him. It must be said that this trick worked very well. Uchiha felt his blood pressure rising, and both of his Sharingan were developing towards the three Magatama. At this moment, the projection of Uchiha had come to him, and suddenly accelerated and appeared beside him, and punched him cleanly. It's all an illusion, it can't scare me. Uchiha, who saw through Xia Yan's sinister intentions, naturally would not give the other party a chance to laugh at him. He seemed not to see the growing fist, standing still, with a disdainful smile on his face. It seemed that blinking would damage the reputation of the Uchiha clan. Therefore, when he noticed that there was chakra flowing in this projection, the whistling fist wind had already hit his face, and it was too late to react. Bang! A real fist hit Uchiha's handsome face and knocked him out. Who am I? Where am I? Why was I hit by a projection? Why am I pretending to be cool and not even hiding? Uchiha, who was flying in the air, had countless question marks in his head. His painful cheek kept telling him that the blow just now was not an illusion. His confused brain quickly started to work again. From the fact that he was knocked away into the scene of chakra flow just now, it seems that Uchiha is obviously not a simple projection. Uchiha began to regret it. Why didn't he notice it immediately just now, and was so sure that it was a projection? Thinking of this, several fragments flashed through Uchiha's mind, and suddenly he had a terrible guess. Could it be that Xia Yan kept mentioning the card pack, the dual disc, and the flame projection when Uchiha appeared just now, all to guide my thoughts to the keening cards? Let me unconsciously regard Uchiha as a projection created by the dual disc. Finally, the image of Uchiha was used to make me angry and rebellious, so that I ignore the important details. Hiss. Uchiha couldn't help but take a breath. Are all people who practice sealing techniques so deep in their minds? Did he prepare for this punch when they met in the alley? While Xia Yan was constantly thinking about it, Xia Yan in the distance was also a little confused. Just like that. How could his tentative attack send his opponent flying? You fell down before I even exerted any strength. Did he not open his Sharingan just now and thought it was a projection? Xia Yan scratched his head in confusion. At the same time, Xia Yan finally ended his journey as a flying man in the air and landed steadily. Although the two of them were thinking a lot just now, in fact, it only took a few seconds for Xia Yan to land from being hit. After landing, he immediately took a fighting posture because the Uchiha had already caught up. The first thing is to figure out the reality of this Uchiha. He first used his Sharingan to glance at Xia Yan not far away and saw that chakra was flowing in his body. It is also a physical body. This ruled out the possibility that Xia Yan was just a projection, and this Uchiha was the real body. So did he use the shadow clone technique? Although he subconsciously thought that this Uchiha was a shadow clone, but with Xia Yan's cunning, it might be the opposite, and this was the real body. Or maybe both sides were shadow clones, and the real body didn't know where to hide when the sea of fire appeared just now. At this moment, Uchiha had already rushed in front of him and punched him again. Xia Yan frowned slightly, feeling that this move was very familiar. Even the details of the action were exactly the same. He didn't think I would be hit again, did he? Uchiha would not be hit by the same move twice. However, in order to avoid other tricks from the opponent, he decided to temporarily avoid the edge and dodge the opponent's sharp punch. Bang! The big tree behind him was suddenly smashed into spiderweb-like cracks, and wood chips flew everywhere. Although the power was okay, it always had a strong sense of disobedience with Uchiha's appearance. That's it. After all, Xia Yan grew up listening to the stories of Uchiha. Although sometimes I feel that the elders in the clan are exaggerating Uchiha's strength. He can flatten the top of a mountain and change the terrain at any time. But it can't be just this powerful. Xia Yan complained in his heart, and took out 4 shurikens from the ninja tool bag with both hands, clamped them between his fingers, and shot them at Xia Yan and Uchiha respectively. Dang! 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 A total of 8 shurikens were blocked by the two opponents. However, at this time, Xia Yan had come to Madara under the cover of the shuriken. Whether it is a shadow clone or not, you will know as long as you hit it. And from just now he found that this Madara's movements are not very smooth. It seems that Xia Yan puts all his energy on the sealing technique, so his physical skills are not very good. Therefore, he is sure that he can break it in a few rounds. Sure enough, when the two Uchiha started fighting, Xia Yan suppressed Madara to fight. It feels like he has reached the peak of his life. Seeing that Madara was about to be hit by Xia Yan naturally couldn't let him have his way. He decisively pressed the button corresponding to the ambush card on the dual disc. Activate the trap card magic top hat. The next moment, Xia Yan saw Madara suddenly jump back. Just as he was about to chase, he was blocked by 4 huge top hats that fell from the sky and stopped instinctively. Then he reacted again. This was another phantom created by the projection technique. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to figure it out now. Madara had been covered by one of the top hats. Then the 4 top hats began to move at high speed, sometimes overlapping each other, and sometimes swapping positions. When they stopped, even Xia Yan, who had the Sharingan, couldn't figure out the position of Madara. So is this the tactic of Xia Yan? Shadow clones attack, and the main body creates projections in the back to cover. It really looks like a strategy that this insidious guy would adopt. Xia Yan waved his hand. Go. Guess which hat my Madara is hiding in. If you guess wrong, you will be punished, and Xia Yan's answer was fire style. Phoenix fire technique. He quickly formed seals with both hands, and spit out 5 small fireballs from his puffed mouth, flying towards the 4 hats and Xia Yan respectively. Young man, you have no martial ethics. Xia Yan, who had planned to watch the show, was startled by the fireball and dodged the attack of the fireball with a sidestep. Fortunately, that Madara was not too honest. Seeing the fireball flying, he also directly drilled out of a top hat projection and dodged the attack of the fireball. However, this was also within Xia Yan's calculations. At the moment when Madara appeared, he was ready to go over and deal with it. However, at this time, something strange happened, causing him to stop again. Because he was surprised to see that Madara suddenly danced on the spot. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 65, another crazy one. After the lesson just now, Xia Yan no longer dared to underestimate any action of Xia Yan. So he did not act rashly at this time, but stood not far away, observing the actions of Madara with a vigilant face. He saw the other party twisting his waist to the silent beat, stepping on the enchanting dance steps, sometimes raising his wrist and lowering his eyebrows, and sometimes gently stretching his hands. This made Xia Yan more and more certain of his guess. That's right, he was dancing. And it was a dance he had never seen before. The Uchiha clan has always been a family tradition of ninja dance. Every true Uchiha will practice excellent dancing skills. Even the cool Uchiha fluid technique actually incorporates a lot of dance moves. Therefore, when Xia Yan saw his ancestor start to dance, he did not feel humiliated, but felt that Xia Yan was quite restored in this regard. At the same time, as a player who advanced to the top 8 of the world's #1 dance meeting held in the clan last year, Xia Yan naturally has a deep attainment in dancing. Therefore, the graceful butterfly steps and the domineering Oiran steps quickly attracted his attention. The dance gene in his body began to stir, and he felt that he was about to lose control of himself and wanted to rush forward to have a hearty dance battle with the other party. However, his only rationality made him dare not act rashly. Because he knew that this Madara would not dance for no reason. Xia Yan must have some terrible conspiracy. Therefore, Xia Yan became more vigilant and even used the Sharingan to record the movements of Madara one by one. Xia Yan, who was believed to have a terrible conspiracy, was now slapping that dual disc with his hands with a helpless look on his face, and muttering in his mouth. Gan, it actually malfunctions during the battle, and the shadow clone danced to the Pure Land. Sure enough, some strange movement pattern should not be recorded in the dual disc. Yes, Xia Yan was not wrong, that Madara was indeed Xia Yan's shadow clone. It's just that this shadow clone is a little different from the usual ones. This is actually one of the latest results of Xia Yan's recent research on the shadow clone technique. The second energy-saving version of the shadow clone technique after the infant clone technique. Just like he developed the infant clone technique because the research work does not require a strong body, so he can shrink the body to save chakra. Xia Yan found that the shadow clone in battle often does not need too high intelligence. In other words, the cost-effectiveness is not high enough, and it wastes chakra. After all, he discovered a long time ago that allowing the shadow clone to generate and maintain intelligence is the most chakra-consuming part. So when Xia Yan recently had a deep understanding of the shadow clone technique, he began to develop a brain-shrinking version of the shadow clone technique. He was like a mad scientist, trying to perform brain removal surgery on the shadow clone. The goal is to leave only the minimum intelligence and maintain the existence of the shadow clone. The actions of the shadow clone are controlled by the simple action program he wrote and the micro-manipulation of the dual disc. This dual disc is equipped with a controller developed based on the principle of the perception array, which can wirelessly control the actions of the shadow clone over a short distance. Because it is similar to the puppet technique of Sand Village, Xia Yan called this technique the shadow puppet technique. Although this technique took a long time, it seems that I only got a shadow clone that I still need to control. It feels a bit thankless. But this technique is good in quantity. For Xia Yan, who has a small amount of chakra, exchanging the amount of operation for chakra is a very cost-effective deal. You know, the chakra consumed to maintain an ordinary shadow clone is enough to maintain the existence of 5 shadow puppets. To put it in an analogy, the gift of marrying a wife is enough to buy 5 lifelike silicone wives. Except that you need to move it yourself, there is no disadvantage at all. Well, I'm talking about the shadow puppet. It's a pity that this technique has just been developed not long ago, and Xia Yan's drastic reduction of the intelligence of the shadow clone has also led to unpredictable consequences, so this technique still has a lot of bugs. Look, it actually jumped into the Pure Land in the battle. But this is also a blessing in disguise. Xia Yan couldn't help but sweat when he thought of the large number of indescribable action modes he had built into the dual disc. If the shadow clone was allowed to perform those actions with Uchiha Madara's face, Xia Yan was worried that the real Uchiha Madara would come to him in the middle of the night and say a few heartfelt words. Not long after Xia Yan used the ancestral slapping method to repair the dual disc, the Uchiha Madara suddenly stopped dancing. Hectares, the slapping repair method is indeed forever magical. But before Xia Yan could be happy for a few seconds, the Uchiha Madara suddenly shook all over, and then exploded on the spot. Why did it switch to another art? Xia Yan was stunned. On the other side, Xia Yan, who was humbly observing the dance of Uchiha Madara, was also shocked by the explosion. To be honest, he had been recording this dance with the Sharingan just now. The more he watched, the more he felt that it was passionate and unrestrained, with unlimited creativity. It ignited a flame in his heart. It felt like Uchiha was about to explode at this moment, unexpectedly. Before he exploded, Uchiha Madara actually exploded. He exploded on the spot. So what was the purpose of this dance and the explosion? Uchiha couldn't help but fall into deep thought again. Was it a mistake? No, it couldn't be that simple. Uchiha knew that every move of Yushin Xia Yan had a very deep intention. If he didn't figure it out, it might be like before, waiting to fall into the trap and then find out that this was the foreshadowing of the trap. But this could also be that Yushin Xia Yan predicted my prediction of him. So he made up a weird dance to disrupt my thinking. But now I have predicted that he predicted my prediction, so, no, if he predicted that I predicted that he predicted my prediction, then it is still possible to set a trap. How far did Yushin Xia Yan predict? Uchiha scratched his head with both hands, his hair fell down, and he felt that his brain was not enough. Wag. After a moment, Xia Yan, whose brain had turned into a mess, suddenly screamed. He began to rush towards Xia Yan. After giving up that conspiracy of Yushin Xia Yan, Xia Yan felt that his soul had been sublimated. Yes. In the face of absolute power, all conspiracies and tricks are futile. He can obviously crush him with his strength, why should he guess what the guy is thinking? Xia Yan realized it. Human wisdom has its limits. He learned one thing in this brief exchange: the more scheming a person is, the more likely he is to fall into unexpected difficulties and lose all his previous efforts, unless he surpasses humans. So, he decided to give up thinking. Thank you for the reward from the book friend Lawiniwezayo. Thank you for the reward from the book friend 11 Wan. Thank you for the reward from the book Friend Q Nan Lu Q. Chapter 66 StarCraft players don't need and Xia Yan no longer struggled with the battle of wits, reason prevailed, and emotions were gone. He began to kill Xia Yan with a cold face. Seeing this, Xia Yan knew that it was time to decide the winner, and finally got serious. Activate Resurrection of the Dead. Then he slapped a card on the dual disc. The Yachi Madara who had just exploded appeared in front of Xia Yan again, looking unharmed. Look. Our bond allowed him to return to the world from the Pure Land again. Don't establish a bond with other people's dead ancestors without authorization. It's obviously just a recreation of a shadow clone. Xia Yan's forehead had a few more blue veins, and finally he couldn't help but sneered. Humph. Xia won't be hit by the same move twice. You sensei are from somewhere. Xia Yan slapped another card on the dual disc. Since one person can't beat him, I'll bring more. Activate the shadow clone technique. The next moment, the Xia Madara began to form hand seals at a high speed, and 4 figures that looked exactly like him popped up beside him. Seeing this, Xia Yan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It's not easy. He, who doesn't have much chakra, actually had a day when he used shadow clones to beat others. He also accidentally let Xia enjoy the VIP treatment of the 5 kid in the original work. Xia Yan waved his hand again, pointed at Xia at high spirits and ordered, "Go." Xia Tiantuan, let him see the strength of the Xia clan. At his command, the 5 Xia Madara leaned forward and fought with Xia. Under Xia Yan's control, the 5 clones attacked and defended as one, and launched a continuous attack on Xia as a whole. Although Xia Yan was facing 5 shadow clones, he was still calm and fearless. It was not until now that he felt like he was really sparring with them. Just now, Yushin Xia Yan was either playing cards or suddenly letting his shadow clones dance. There was really no atmosphere of sparring. All kinds of cool and fancy moves were flying. He seemed to be dancing with the 5 clones, and he seemed to be able to do it with ease. His blood-red eyes accompanied his movements, leaving 2 blood-red streams in the void. Even though the opponent's overall coordination was impeccable, his weaknesses of low physical skills and stiff movements were still infinitely magnified in his Sharingan. Too slow. Too slow. Soon he seized the opportunity, dodged all attacks by slipping through the gap, and then kicked the 2 clones with a Thomas spin. Just when he wanted to pursue the victory and destroy the other clones. Several shurikens came through the wind, forcing him to jump back and dodge, losing the opportunity to continue attacking. He turned his head and saw 2 newly produced Xia Madara rushing over, and reforming a formation with the other 3. Xia Yan laughed, then dodged forward and continued to mingle with his ancestors. At this time, Xia Yan did not play tricks anymore. Whenever a clone disappeared, he would directly create a new one to fill the vacancy. As for why he did not create more clones at once, it was because the current 5 clones were the limit of his barely controllable. If physical skills were not enough, tactics would make up for it. Xia Yan began to constantly change the formation of the 5 clones, trying to break through Xia Yan's defense with dazzling operations. By the way, he used this sparring partner to test all the tactics he designed for the shadow puppet. With the effectiveness of some tactics and the improvement of Xia Yan's operation level, Xia Yan's pressure increased suddenly, and he began to not be limited to physical skills. Ninja tools, ninjutsu, illusion, the versatile characteristics of the Xia clan were fully utilized at this time. Except for the fact that illusions could not work on these clones for some reason, the throwing of ninja tools and ninjutsu were very effective. At one point, they were reduced to only 1 person. As expected, the Xia clan guys are not so easy to deal with. Xia Yan had tried all the tactics he designed and gained a lot, but he still couldn't do anything to Xia Yan. Since the generation, maintenance and destruction of shadow clones will consume chakra, even if Xia Yan's shadow clones are the special edition of pin shixes, they can't withstand such consumption. In desperation, he had to show Xia Yan something new. This time he still hit some sense of ritual and slapped a card on the dual disc again. Activate Magic Mist Rain. Xia Yan, who was struggling with 5 shadow clones and was a little out of breath, became alert when he heard the words. I saw that the whole grove began to be filled with a grey mist with him as the center. What was a little creepy was that the mist vaguely formed the shape of a skeleton, and the several Xia Madara beside him also stopped attacking at the same time, retreated one after another, and hid in the mist. The fog was getting thicker and thicker, and soon it was so thick that you couldn't see your hand in front of you. So, projection can also be used to completely block your vision. Xia Yan's face darkened, but he was not too surprised. When he saw the sea of fire and the huge hat just now, he actually thought that this might happen. After all, no matter who fights the Uchiha clan, they will try to limit the use of the Sharingan. Such as the darkness technique of the Senju clan, the mist hidden technique of the hidden mist village, the thunder lightning pillar of the hidden cloud village, or just don't show up like the puppet master of the sand village. If you don't know any of them, then please put a bag of lime powder in your ninja tool bag. The Uchiha clan has continued to this day and has seen countless methods against the Sharingan, so naturally they have a set of countermeasures. For example, when he was very young, he would be tied up from time to time to receive various training. Starting from dodging various projectiles, to practicing against each other, and finally even throwing them into the forest to roam for a few days without seeing anything. Therefore, even if his eyesight is deprived now, Xia Yan is not too worried. It is better to say that defeating the opponent in this situation and appreciating the other party's incredible expression is also a kind of pleasant enjoyment. He covered the soles of his feet with chakra, quietly left the place, and began to look for Xia Yan's position just now, wanting to capture the thief first. But before he took a few steps, there was a sudden sound of breaking wind in the mist beside him, and a fist came out and hit him. Xia Yan's pupil shrank, crossed his hands and barely blocked the attack, then counterattacked with a kick, but it only hit nothing. He ran away. But Xia Yan was more concerned about how the opponent found him. He thought that the opponent should be imitating the silent killing technique of the Karigaku and judge his position by sound. So he had covered the corresponding parts with chakra, reducing the breathing, heartbeat, and footsteps to the minimum, so it should not be so easy to be discovered. Perception ninjutsu. Then Yushin Xia Yan should not have the opportunity to contact it. Unless he set up a perception array on the spot, Xia Yan really didn't know what other possibilities there were. Is it just a coincidence? Just as he had this thought, another pair of sandals kicked over from the thick fog. We've been discovered again. Xia Yan dodged and saw that the opponent had escaped with another attack. Just as he was about to chase him, he was hit by a punch and a kick from both sides. Xia Yan's blood pressure began to rise again. How can they find me when no one can see me? Because StarCraft players don't need vision. At this time, Xia Yan was sitting leisurely on a small wooden stake, operating the virtual keyboard and mouse skillfully with both hands. The interface in front of him was showing a map. On the map created using the principle of the perception array, the positions of Xia Yan and the 5 shadow clones were clearly visible. Hit and run, blocking and killing, skill interruption. Xia Yan didn't expect that the skills he learned from the game in his previous life would still be useful in the ninja world. Moreover, the ninja's physical fitness allowed him to operate extremely fast, his hands were like phantoms, and his APM per minute directly exceeded 3000. At this time, the battle was no longer suspenseful. Even if Xia tried his best, he was no match for Xia Yan, who had activated the full match sheet. Finally, with a thud, the grove returned to peace again. GG. Xia Yan, who was sitting on the small wooden stake, stretched and stood up again. The thick fog in the grove gradually dissipated. Xia had fainted on the ground, as if he had been ravaged by 5 big men. Xia Yan looked at the 5 Uchiha Madara standing beside him and thought that this didn't seem to be a big mistake. The Uchiha clan's special Junin was dealt with without using the sealing technique. It seems that this tactic still has some merits. Xia Yan thought to himself. Just when he was about to make these clones disappear, he didn't expect them to start moving again. They suddenly formed a formation, each of them made strange movements full of second gear, and shouted in unison. Jinyu special attack, with a snap, with Xia Yan's snap of his fingers, the 5 shadow clones disappeared instantly. He held his forehead slightly. Decided to delete all the weird action patterns when I get home. After Xia Yan adjusted his mood, he suddenly clapped his hands and said loudly, "Okay, the guy over there, you can come out now." After that, he looked at the jujube tree just now. With a swish, a figure flashed out and soon landed beside Xia Yan. He first bowed slightly to Xia Yan, and then leaned over to check on Xia Yan's condition. Although he looked a little miserable, he actually only suffered some superficial injuries and was not seriously injured. His expression relaxed, he stood up again, and cast his eyes on Xia Yan. "I'm Fuinjutsu, the captain of this guy in the police department. I'm really sorry to have caused you trouble this time." Chapter 67. In order to save Xia, Fuinjutsu decided, Fuinjutsu is the future patriarch of the Uchiha clan. He is also the father of Uchiha Itachi, the filial son in the original work, and Uchiha Sasuke, the official heroine. However, at this time, he was only a small captain of the Konoha police department, and he was actually quite tough and handsome. It's just that his eyes are too sharp, and coupled with a rigid face, it makes people afraid to get close to him. He is worthy at being called the man with the evil eyes Fuinjutsu in the future. Uchiha Fuinjutsu is the most dazzling existence of the Uchiha clan in this generation, and Xia Yan is no stranger to him. But this is the first time they actually talked. Hearing Uchiha Fuinjutsu's insincere apology, Xia Yan curled his lips slightly and said casually, "It doesn't matter, but if Captain Fuinjutsu really thinks so, you can show up earlier next time. Unless there is a curse in the ninja world that the police must arrive at the scene only after the matter is resolved." Unlike his somewhat aggressive appearance, Fuinjutsu is a calm and composed person. He was neither angry nor pretended not to hear Xia Yan's teasing. He explained seriously, "Teacher Yushin, since you have been in contact with Xia Yan, you should know that he is not a person who will give up easily. I can stop it this time, but I can't keep an eye on Xia Yan every day. Instead of letting it get out of control in the end, it is better to let you and Xia Yan solve the conflict in a ninja way from the beginning. With me watching, you and Xia Yan won't really get hurt." After listening to Fuinjutsu's explanation, Xia Yan didn't know what expression to make for a while. Because Fuinjutsu's words sounded reasonable at first glance, but in fact they were just trying to smooth things over. Just trying to resolve the conflict, regardless of right and wrong. It's just that the way to resolve the conflict is to let the two sides fight, making this move of smoothing things over a little hardcore. But what makes Xia Yan helpless is that this is actually a very sparse and common thing in the ninja world. The great power belongs to oneself, and the ninja who is used to fighting and killing will naturally develop path dependence and like to use fighting to solve all problems. Right or wrong is not very important. Xia Yan has been in the ninja world for more than 10 years, but he still can't adapt to this. Seeing that Xia Yan didn't agree, Uchiha Fuinjutsu had some misunderstandings and added, "But just now, Mr. Yushin, you only used your own projection technique and shadow clone technique to easily solve Xia Yan, which makes me worry too much. No matter what, we are wrong. I will give Mr. Yushin a satisfactory explanation." Xia Yan touched his nose and felt that he was not good at dealing with such a serious guy. Is Fuinjutsu like this in the original work? Xia Yan thought about it and said, "No need, Captain Fuinjutsu, I just hope that this matter will end here and won't be endless." Fuinjutsu nodded and said, "Of course. That's good. Since you are here, Captain Fuinjutsu, I will leave first." After saying that, Xia Yan waved his hand and turned to leave. But at this time, Fuinjutsu's voice came from behind him again. "Mr. Yushin, I heard that you were guiding Obito's training recently." Xia Yan stopped and turned to look at Fuinjutsu. "I just asked him to help me test some teaching aids and give him a few pointers. If it violates the taboos of the Uchiha clan, I can replace him with someone else." Upon hearing this, Fuinjutsu realized that his fierce eyes and stiff tone had caused misunderstandings, and he shook his head repeatedly. "That's not what I meant. It's his luck that Obito can get the guidance of Mr. Yushin. What I really want to ask is, since you, Mr. Xia Yan, are willing to guide Obito, you should not have too much prejudice against the Uchiha clan. Why do some places treat the Uchiha clan differently? What do you mean? After all, the Genin cards you designed clearly pit Uchiha Madara against Senju Hashirama, okay, and Sarutobi Sasuke, but they have already released a lot of matching card decks, but Uchiha Madara's has not kept up with the version at all. Isn't this differential treatment of the Uchiha clan?" Hearing Uchiha Fuinjutsu discussing Genin cards with him seriously, Xia Yan's expression couldn't help but be a little strange. "Captain Fuinjutsu, you know quite a lot. Ahem, after all, Genin cards are a hot topic in the village now. As a captain of the police department, I naturally have the responsibility to understand it." Uchiha Fuinjutsu explained seriously. "I see." Xia Yan looked at Fuinjutsu meaningfully, and then said, "As for the situation Captain Fuinjutsu mentioned, the reason is actually very simple. I treat you differently, not your Uchiha clan, but Uchiha Madara. Although that person made great contributions to the establishment of Konoha, he still betrayed the village after all. Not to mention that he once tried to attack the village, which indirectly led to the early death of the first generation. I believe I don't need to say more about what the death of the first generation means. It can be said that the first and second ninja world wars were just the aftermath of his death. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that Sengoku couldn't avoid this person, he shouldn't have been made into a card." After listening to Xia Yan's words, Fuinjutsu showed a helpless bitter smile. "Teacher Yushin, you are really rude. If Father Uchiha hear you, you will be forced to spar again." Although it seems a bit excessive to blame Uchiha Madara for the death of Senju Hashirama and the First and Second Ninja World Wars. But this is exactly what many people in Konoha think now. It's just that the first generation of Okage defined the matter. Konoha held a funeral and built a statue to commemorate the war, so people don't talk about it much. However, when the tragic news of the sacrifice of family members came during the two Ninja World Wars, everyone couldn't help but chant. If only the first generation of Okage was here. You can imagine what these people think of the Uchiha clan. The Uchiha clan was excluded in the village. In addition to personality defects and the fact that they were in charge of police work and easily conflicted with villagers, this is also a very important reason. Just like the first generation of Okage's distribution of tailed beasts ruined the Uzumaki clan, Uchiha Madara's actions also harmed the Uchiha clan. This black pot is too heavy, and the Uchiha clan really can't bear it. After listening to Xia Yan's explanation, Fuinjutsu was half happy and half worried. He was happy that this teacher Yushin was a rare person who had no prejudice against the Uchiha clan. He was worried that Uchiha Madara and the Uchiha clan were basically tied together, and there was no difference between treating him differently and treating the Uchiha clan differently. Fuinjutsu was so obsessed with the matching cards of Uchiha Madara in the Gaijin cards, naturally not for playing cards. As the son of the clan leader, he hit the goal of making the Uchiha clan great again since he was a child. Every day, he worked hard to make the Uchiha clan no longer excluded by the village he founded. Unfortunately, there was not much effect. However, the Gaijin cards gave him a glimmer of hope. Because he found that many young people recently were attracted by the strength and appearance of Uchiha Madara in the Gaijin cards, and their views on the Uchiha clan had changed. This phenomenon allowed Fuinjutsu to see a new way to save the family. Since the previous generation cannot be changed, then change the next generation's view of the Uchiha clan. The recent changes in Saratobi Sasuke's image in the eyes of the world also gave him a lot of inspiration. Since even a perverted old man can be praised as an existence on par with the two gods of the ninja world, it is not too much for him to beautify Uchiha Madara a little to restore everyone's view of the Uchiha clan. In order to save the Uchiha, Fuinjutsu decided to make Uchiha Madara an idol. So he began to imitate the Sasuke Raiden and first arranged for people to write a few novels for his ancestors. He even drew inferences from one example and prepared to use the current popular movies to promote Uchiha Madara. Prepared to make him a national idol. Due to the characterization of the first generation of adults, Uchiha Madara did not bear the identity of a rebel ninja, but was still a serious Konoha ninja, so on the surface, his actions were completely fine. However, before his grand plan even began, he discovered a helpless fact. Uchiha Madara began to become outdated. At the same time, everyone's perception of the Uchiha clan began to decline. The reason for the decline was actually due to the update of the Gaijin cards, which made the Uchiha Madara deck without supporting cards gradually less used. At this time, he truly realized the magic of Gaijin cards. What really made Uchiha Madara popular was not only his own charm, but more importantly, a platform for him to show himself. That is, Gaijin cards. However, through Xia Yan's explanation just now, Fuinjutsu knew that it would be difficult for Xia Yan to continue to release supporting cards for Uchiha Madara. But for the sake of the family, he still shamelessly asked, "Teacher Yushin, is there really no way?" Chapter 68 The dead are more useful than the living. Teacher Yushin, is there really no way? Fuinjutsu rarely looked at Xia Yan with a pleading look. However, with his sharp eyes and serious face, it seemed like he was threatening Xia Yan. Fortunately, Xia Yan didn't mind and said leisurely, "Actually, it's not that there is no way." Fuinjutsu slightly stumped and didn't react. He thought Xia Yan would either refuse directly or make excuses. Unexpectedly, he got the answer he wanted so easily. This made Fuinjutsu a little skeptical and didn't dare to be happy too early. Then he heard Xia Yan say, "Captain Fuinjutsu, since you have some research on Keening cards, you should also know that this game has a ranking mode." Fuinjutsu nodded. Ranking mode, also known as ladder, is the most popular game mode in Keening Tavern now. This mode will divide players into 5 levels according to their rankings. Ninja School students, Genin, Chunin, Jinin and Card Shadow. Players can improve their rankings and then their levels by playing against other players. This mode has a 3-month season, and rewards will be distributed according to the player's rank and ranking at the end of the season. Due to the generous rewards of this mode, it is very popular among players. Xia Yan continued, "Then you should know, Captain Fuinjutsu, that the player ranked first in each season will have the power to challenge the current Duel King. If he can win, he will become the new Duel King." Seeing that Fuinjutsu was a little confused, Xia Yan smiled and continued to explain. Don't think this is just an empty title. Players who become Jewel Kings will also receive a series of corresponding rewards, such as an unreleased portable jewel disc, a shamate hairstyle package from Tony from Konoha Hair Salon, and they can also become the image spokesperson for the Keening cards and participate in various promotional activities, and so on. More importantly, the Keenan Tavern will also sell exclusive card packs for the new Jewel King, and the new cards in it will be designed according to his ideas. After all, he is the Jewel King who has reached the top with great difficulty, so even if the cards he wants to design are a little out of the ordinary, we will try our best to meet his requirements. As for the players, I believe they will understand. Although teacher Yushin provided him with a clear path, Fuku didn't know why he felt that there seemed to be countless pitfalls ahead of this path. Fuku wanted to ask further, but Xia Yan only gave him a meaningful smile and then disappeared. Only the voices were still echoing in the grove. Since it's a matter of King cards, it should be solved by King cards. If you want Uchiha Madara's matching deck, come and challenge me. I'll be waiting for you on the Jewel King throne. Fuku stood there and murmured, King cards way, is this a response to the ninja way I just said? He shook his head and smiled bigly. It seems that this Yushin teacher is a little narrow-minded. However, since the ninja way can't save the Uchiha, then try another way, maybe. Fuku stood there for a long time, and finally seemed to have made up his mind, picked up Xia Yan and disappeared. The whole grove finally returned to peace, leaving only the faint sound of insects. In the evening, in a large house in the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fukuyama, the head of the Uchiha clan, was sitting cross-legged on the veranda beside the courtyard, playing shogi for his own amusement. At this time, Uchiha Fuku walked over from one end of the veranda. Father, the matter has been resolved. He knelt beside Uchiha Fukaku and bowed slightly. Yes, I understand. Uchiha Fukaku was holding a chess piece in his hand, looking at the intricate situation on the chessboard, and asked casually, did Xia Yan hurt him? That kid named Xia Yan has been attracting a lot of attention recently. Don't let others catch our clan's handle. Fuku hesitated for a moment, then said, Father, Xia Yan lost this time. With a snap, the silver general in Fukaku's hand fell on the chessboard, and all the chess pieces were messed up, and it was impossible to see the original appearance. Fukaku, who was slightly stunned, also came back to his senses, frowned and looked at it carefully, and found that he could no longer remember the original appearance of the chess game. Helpless, he could only sneer and reached out to sweep the chess pieces on the chessboard into the chess box. It's good that he lost. It's a good opportunity to teach the kid Xia Yan a lesson, so that he won't look down on others every day. But you have to keep a close eye on him in the future. After all, his father is Uchiha Setsuna. With that guy's protective personality, he may not let it go. Fuku replied, Don't worry, father. I have already told Xia Yan about it. With his personality, he will definitely not tell others about it. As for the injuries on his body, I will let him blame it on me. But in this way, my reputation of Fuku with fierce eyes will probably become even more famous. Fukuyama was amused when he heard this, and pointed at Fuku and said, I don't know who you inherited these eyes from. You have been so fierce since you were a child. I still remember that Makoto was often scared to tears by you when she was a child. I didn't expect that now she would, cough cough cough. Fuku coughed lightly a few times and interrupted his father's words. Okay, let's talk about business first. Fukuyama smiled, pondered for a moment and said, As for the Gyuu Natsuiko and the Keenan Tavern, to be honest, I don't quite understand it. People get old, and their ability to accept new things is also poor. Fuku, do you think we should continue to wait and see, or cancel the authorization like Shiguro and others did? Fuku shook his head and gave his well-considered answer. No, father. It is precisely because this is a new thing that we have the opportunity to re-establish our clan's image. So we should instead increase our efforts and build a good relationship with Mr. Yushin. If possible, it would be best to cooperate with him, for example, to invest in the Keenan Tavern. Fukuyama raised his eyebrows when he heard this, and smiled. It seems that you have a very high opinion of that Mr. Yushin. Fuku nodded and said, after all, it only took him 2 months to transform an old pervert into a hero who can rival Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Fukuyama was also speechless. You mean old man Sasuke? Speaking of which, he used to pretend to have amnesia and sneak into the women's bathhouse, and I caught him many times. I didn't expect that his reputation would improve after his death. Father, this is because the dead are sometimes more useful than the living. Fuku said. No matter how much we brag about the dead, we are not afraid that everyone will see the real Uchiha and become disillusioned. As for the living, for example, our Uchiha clan was so popular during the ninja school, but after getting along for a long time, everyone kept their distance because of their personality problems. So I plan to imitate Saratobi Sasuke's route and use novels, movies, etc. to change the younger generation's views on Uchiha Madara. After all, Uchiha Madara is dead. No matter how we change his personality image, we are not afraid that everyone will see the real Uchiha Madara. Fukuyama was a little hesitant after hearing this. Is this really good? After all, that person was our former clan leader. Fuku said. Father, a large part of the reason for our clan's current situation can be attributed to him. It is only natural to start solving the problem from him. I believe that Uchiha Madara in the Pure Land, Sama will also be happy about this. Fukuyama didn't know whether that person would be happy, but he was very pleased to see Fuku, who was in high spirits and talking eloquently. After a long sigh, he said, in that case, then you should give it a try first. I guess you already have a preliminary plan, so what is the first step? Fuku hesitated for a moment, and finally showed a resolute expression. In order to save Uchiha, first of all, I need to become the Jewel King. Uchiha Fukuyama. Chapter 69 Research Group. Since the battle between Xia Yan and Uchiha Xia Yan, there has been a regular customer in the Kinen Tavern. Uchiha Fuku. He did not disguise himself like other guests, but showed his true face. However, in order to blend in with the environment, he also used the skills of transformation and dyed his hair green at the suggestion of Might Guy. He also received praise from Xia Yan for this. Fuku would come to the Kinen Tavern early every day after get off work from the police department to play cards. However, unlike other people who come to the tavern to relax, he comes to the tavern as if he is going to the battlefield, always with a serious face. He thinks carefully about every game of cards and goes all out. He will not start to operate until the rope is burned in each round. Not to mention himself, even the bystanders are tired of watching. Moreover, Fuku, for some reason, likes to sit in front of the Kinen game machine closest to the door and playing cards, so that everyone who enters the store can see him. So when those psychopaths of the Uchiha clan saw Fuku with evil eyes sitting here, their conditions improved immediately and they were not so easy to get sick. The identity of the captain of the police force also made the troublemakers of other ninja clans dare not be too arrogant. For a time, the atmosphere of the tavern was cleared. From a terrible tavern where a bunch of shamate gathered, it became an ordinary tavern where a bunch of shamate gathered. Well, at least it is better than before. In order to thank Fuku for his contribution, Xia Yan not only asked Might Guy to send him a glass of triple concentrated green juice every day, but also personally played a few games with him to let him weigh that gold content of the Jewel King. The result was naturally no suspense, and Fuku ended in a miserable defeat. However, Fuku's expression was also relaxed a lot because of this. Because he understood. Teacher Yushin wanted to tell him that Kinen cards is profound and he still has a long way to go to become a Jewel King, so he doesn't need to be so anxious, and he can enjoy the fun of Kinen cards a little bit first. But not long after he had this thought, Xia Yan patted him on the shoulder and said, "It seems that you haven't charged enough money, Fuku." ... With the presence of the gate guard Fuku, the operation of the tavern has become more stable. Xia Yan's work focus has also been put back on the ninja school. Speaking of which, the semester has passed halfway without him noticing. Last week, the school also held a midterm exam. Originally, the ninja school did not have this practice. It was Xia Yan who saw that everyone had been studying for 2 months and began to slack off, so he proposed it to Principal Daiwako. This small change made many students who like to wait until the end of the semester to cram complain bitterly. Xia Yan has also received many students gnashing teeth thanks for this recently. Although this midterm exam scheme has been unanimously criticized by the students, its effect is surprisingly good. The students' relaxed nerves have been tightened again because of this exam, and the learning atmosphere in the school has become strong again. Principal Daiwako also praised Xia Yan for this and told him to give any good suggestions. She also decided to make this midterm exam a regular practice and continue to hold it in the future. So the students who got the news looked at teacher Xia Yan with more and more resentment. So Xia Yan, who originally had a few secret plans for school reform, decided to postpone his proposal to avoid provoking everyone's weak hearts again. The sealing art class on Wednesday morning. Xia Yan had just finished explaining the questions on the midterm exam paper at the sealing art class to the students. Seeing that some people still made mistakes on some questions that had been explained several times, Xia Yan felt his blood pressure rise a little, and began to understand the feelings of those teachers in his previous life who were disappointed with their students. He really wanted to slam the table and say, "You are the worst class I have ever taught." It's a pity that he has only taught this class. So this trip can only be used until next school year. Seeing that time is almost up, Xia Yan began to assign homework. Today's homework is to copy all the questions you got wrong 3 times, analyze the reasons for your mistakes and how to correct them, and hand them in next class. After assigning the homework, he said, "Students who ranked in the top 20 inches the midterm exam, please stay for a while. The rest of the students can go home now." As soon as he finished speaking, the bell rang. The little ninjas couldn't help but look at teacher Xia Yan with admiration. He didn't look at the clock, but he always kept time so accurately. What kind of spirit is this? Although the class was over, most of the students were still sitting in their seats, intending to see what teacher Xia Yan wanted to do with those students. Unfortunately, Xia Yan didn't let them do what they wanted. "Why don't you leave after class? Did I assign too little homework just now?" In that case, before he finished speaking, the whole classroom was filled with the noisy sound of tables and chairs colliding, and the little ninjas picked up their books and scattered around. In the huge classroom, only Xia Yan, Kashina, and the 20 students were left. Xia Yan waved his hand and asked them to gather in front of the podium. He first glanced at the students and saw many familiar faces in the original work, such as Nohara Lin, Yui Kyorei, Ashuma, Shijin, Ebisu, Marino Waibuki, and the children of the major ninja clans. Xia Yan got straight to the point. "The reason why I kept you here today is actually like this. I plan to set up a research group, or an interest class, a society, a club, whatever you want to call it. The members of this research group will mainly serve as assistants to assist me in the work related to the sealing technique. For example, learn the content of the sealing technique course in advance to help me clarify the future teaching arrangements. Also, as testers, help me test the effects of some new teaching aids. Of course, there is also the opportunity to learn some advanced sealing technique knowledge that will not be taught in class. But since these tasks are not easy, only the best students have the opportunity to join this group." Xia Yan paused for a moment to give them some time to digest. When Xia Yan saw the little ninjas gradually holding their heads high and their faces beaming with pride, he knew that they had understood. Seeing this, Kashina couldn't help but cover her mouth with her eyebrows curved. Xia Yan was also generous in giving praise. "You are all students who ranked top in the previous midterm exams, so naturally you were my first choice." But, before the little ninjas had time to be happy, they were attracted by Xia Yan's butt. Xia Yan continued, "But these tasks will take up a lot of extracurricular time. At the same time, due to the requirement of research data consistency, it's okay at the beginning. If you quit halfway, it will be very troublesome for me. Although I have tried my best to make the course of sealing arts as interesting as possible, you who have excellent grades should also realize that the real learning of sealing arts is not as interesting as imagined. No, it should be said to be boring. So I need you to think carefully about whether you really have the intention to delve into the sealing arts. Of course, more importantly, you must also get your parents' permission. After all, this is a choice that will affect your future ninja career." Seeing that teacher Xia Yan said so seriously, the smiles of the little ninjas gradually disappeared and began to hesitate. Xia Yan was not disappointed, but nodded and said, "Yes, think about it carefully, and discuss it with your parents when you go home. Just give me a definite answer in the next class." After that, Xia Yan explained the specific details of the research group to everyone. The students were very envious of the sealing techniques that they would not learn in class and the new and interesting teaching aids that they could play with in advance. However, the decision to further study the sealing techniques was not so easy to make. So when the little ninjas left the classroom, they all looked conflicted. Kashina was a little worried when she saw this. "Xia Yan, why are you deliberately making it so serious? What if they all don't join?" Xia Yan shrugged. "Aren't there still students ranked 21st to 40th? Kashina. Xia Yan smiled and said, "In fact, the current ranking is not important at all. What I care more about is whether they have the awareness to study the sealing techniques in depth. Kashina, you should also understand this." Kashina shuddered when she heard this and immediately thought of her painful experience in learning the sealing techniques before. She felt that Xia Yan's words made so much sense, and nodded repeatedly to express her strong agreement. Chapter 70 Xuan Jian's Dream. There are no secrets in the ninja school. Therefore, the news of the sealing technique research group quickly spread throughout the campus. This naturally caused heated discussions among the young ninjas. After all, this is the teacher Xia Yan who invented the projection technique, used the keying cards as teaching aids, and played movies for everyone every day in class. He is unconventional. Every one of his innovations is always sought after by everyone. Last week's midterm exam does not count. However, as the details of the research group gradually became known to everyone, most students' enthusiasm for it quickly dissipated. Although it is very attractive to be able to play with the latest teaching aids in advance, the burden of learning the sealing technique in more depth still makes them discouraged. After all, the current sealing technique learning is already difficult for them. If it weren't for teacher Xia Yan who came up with so many fun things, like a carrot hanging in front of them to attract them, they would probably have given up long ago. The pain of learning the sealing technique and the joy of playing keying and reading stories form a delicate balance. They don't want to break it accidentally. So most students finally reached a consensus and felt that it would be better to continue to attend classes normally for free. After all, free is fun for a while, and it's fun to keep free. However, there are also some students with ordinary backgrounds but high ambitions who are very interested in this research group. After all, they have been suffering from the fact that they do not have the family secrets to practice like the children of the ninja clan, and can only practice the three-body technique taught in school. Now teacher Xia Yan's research group has given them a new opportunity. So they did not wait for the next class, and blocked Xia Yan at the door of the library, begging to join the research group. Xia Yan kept pressing down with both hands, and finally made them quiet down. Looking at everyone's big eyes blinking, full of desire for knowledge, Xia Yan felt a little headache. He said in a gentle tone, "My parents are also civilian ninjas, so they understand your feelings very well. It's a pity that the research group is just a startup and can't accommodate so many students. To be honest, if there are too many of the 20 students willing to join, I will have to test and screen out some of them. So if I agree to let you join the group now, it will be unfair to those students who work hard to get good grades." The more these students listened, the more disappointed they became, and their little faces fell all of a sudden. Especially Xia Yan, he was full of regret. After all, his sealing skills were ranked 21st in the midterm exam. He was just 1 point away from becoming the chosen child. It was all his fault that he had been slacking off recently and not playing cards every day. As a result, he lost a lot of points in the practical part of drawing runes. On the contrary, Ashuma, who usually had average homework grades, actually relied on playing cards every day and performed well in the practical exam. He surpassed him and became the chosen child. But Ashuma's family has so many things to learn. Isn't it like occupying this quota? Although Xia Yan is slightly better than the civilian students around him, he is only from a small ninja clan. Although his ancestors seem to be rich, they have declined after years of war and displacement, and there are not even a few decent ninjutsu in his family. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to hold a sinbone in his mouth every day to learn the secret technique of breaking the sinbone. After all, although it looks cruel, it is actually not that fun. It also caused him to have nightmares every time he heard someone say a liar should swallow 1,000 needles. As for Mei Shirawi, who was added by Xia Yan in the Gaijin cards. To be honest, Xuanjian had no idea that there was such a person in his ancestor. However, Xia Yan was well informed and probably would not make a mistake. So since he saw that there was such a powerful ninja in his ancestor, Xuanjian has been practicing the nature change of fire escape chakra recently, and is also preparing to make a fan with 1,000 books as the fan bones, with the mission of restoring the Shirawi-style ninjutsu. Of course, the advanced dressing style and so on, still do not need to be restored. However, it is very ironic that his hard work has led to his failure to join the research group and lost the opportunity to ask Xia Yan, who knew about Mei Shirawi's deeds. How can he not feel regretful? The other students, like Xuanjian, all regretted not studying hard before. But since Xia Yan said so, they did not dare to continue to pester him. Although Xia Yan is a good teacher and usually has a kind and friendly tone. But they still did not dare to risk being kicked out of the sealing class and anger him. After all, the rumor that the sealing arts class would reduce the number of students has been circulating in the school, and they dare not test the law. However, what they don't know is that this rumor was spread by Xia Yan, the good teacher in front of them. The purpose is naturally to make them dare not slack off. This is the experience Xia Yan learned from his previous life. A little knowledge about hanging street lamps every day. Just when they were dejected and ready to leave, Xia Yan suddenly sighed and said helplessly, Actually, there are some things I don't want to announce so early, but since you want to join the research group so much, there are ways. The students were immediately cheered up when they heard it, and looked at teacher Xia Yan with expectation. Xia Yan didn't keep them in suspense and said, although it is unlikely to join now, if there are no accidents, the research group will continue to recruit new members every school year in the future. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. The next school year is only a few months away, so it's not unacceptable. But Xia Yan's next words made them feel nervous again. But don't be too happy too soon. Since the research group has just been established, there are only loose conditions for the top 20 to join. The conditions in the future will naturally not be so simple. There may be some assessments. So if you are really interested in the research group, then study the sealing technique well. Oh. The little ninjas agreed excitedly, and said goodbye to teacher Xia Yan with hope and expectation. I am not afraid of difficulties, but I am most afraid of not having a direction to work hard. Xia Yan was also full of fighting spirit and decided not to slack off anymore. He must pass the assessment next time. One day, he will restore Shirawi-style ninjutsu. For this reason, he decided to study hard and play cards every day. Xia Yan looked at their jumping figures and left with some emotion. After all, when he was in the ninja school, he had similar experiences as them. Even if he knew the original plot, it was still very difficult for an ordinary ninja school student to obtain ninjutsu other than the 3 body techniques. And even if he got the ninjutsu, he would have no way to start without someone to guide him. Perhaps Xia Yan was preparing to teach the projection technique to the students with the intention of making up for the shortcomings. It was a pity that the sealing technique was a subject that required great talent, and most of them would not be able to join the research group in the end. As expected, there were still too few ways for civilian ninjas to rise. Otherwise, these students would not have flocked to their sealing technique research group. It seems that we still need to speed up the development of teaching aids for other subjects. Xia Yan muttered to himself. Just like before, what Xia Yan said in the library quickly spread throughout the ninja school. Knowing that they would need to take an assessment in the future to join the research group, everyone cast envious eyes on the 20 students. Although if they really got this opportunity, they would probably not choose to join. But this did not prevent them from envying those students who had the opportunity to choose. Being looked at by everyone with such eyes, many students who had already made a decision began to feel a little entangled. But even if they were hesitant, 2 days passed quickly. After the sealing technique class on Friday afternoon, after most of the students left reluctantly, the 20 students gathered in front of the podium again. Xia Yan found it funny to see many students hesitating. He didn't know whether they hadn't made up their minds yet or were afraid that he would get angry if he was rejected. So he had to speak first. Actually, there's no need to be so entangled. After all, even if you don't join now, you can sign up to join next school year if you change your mind later. Of course, you'll have to go through an assessment at the time. The students rolled their eyes at teacher Xia Yan. Teacher, what you said is not helpful at all. One update today. And thank you Maxed Book Friend for the reward of 1,500 starting coins. Chapter 71 The 4 Heavenly Kings of Rain. Teacher Xia Yan. A little girl with short black hair looked around, and seeing that no one wanted to be the first to speak out, she had to step forward with some trepidation. It's Xia Yan, you say? I actually have to go to the hospital to help and learn medical ninjutsu after school. The classmates around were a little surprised when they heard this. They didn't expect that Xia Yan, who has always been low-key, would secretly study every day behind their backs. Xia Yan also raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Xia Yan was Tsuma's disciple in the original work, but he had never heard of such rumors in school, and thought that this had not happened yet. But now it seems that even if the two are not master and apprentice, they should have some connection. That's right, after all, she is the niece of Kato-dan, and even if Tsuma hasn't accepted her as a disciple, it is normal to give her a little care. Damn relatives. Maybe Tsuma is still on a charity trip outside the village, so she threw Xia Yan into the hospital to lay that foundation. After noting down this information, Xia Yan smiled gently and said, it's okay. Learning medical ninjutsu that can save lives is also a good choice. To be honest, I actually took the medical class assessment when I was in ninja school, but unfortunately I didn't pass it. Not only Xia Yan, but also other young ninjas couldn't help showing surprised expressions. Teacher Xia Yan actually has something he is not good at. Xia Yan shrugged his shoulders when he saw this. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and I am no exception. So if you can find a path that suits you better than the sealing technique, I will be happy for you. However, the knowledge of the sealing technique can be applied in many places. For example, the medical ninjutsu that Xia Yan learned is a type that combines the sealing technique like the healing regeneration technique. So even if you don't major in the sealing technique, you can't give up the usual sealing technique courses, so that you can go further on the path you choose. Yes, the young ninjas agreed in unison, and it was unknown whether they really understood. With Xia Yan's demonstration and the reassurance from teacher Xia Yan, everyone finally felt relieved. Most students began to say that they could not join the research group. Among these students, the ones who had the least psychological burden were some children from the ninja clan. They were destined to spend a lot of time learning their own secret ninjutsu, so they naturally could not join the research group. Xia Yan was not surprised by this. He kept them last time just for the sake of funness, so as not to be accused of discriminating against the children of the ninja clan. Some students who seemed a little entangled, like Xia Yan, had other learning directions. They repeatedly compared their talents in the two directions, and finally decided to give up the sealing technique with great pain. It is worth mentioning that Marina Waibuki, who was born in a torture family, said that he would go to the torture department for internship. This also made the students around him decide to stay away from him in the future. Only Xia Yan patted him on the shoulder to show encouragement. This kid has a bright future in the future, and he will have many years of work experience after graduation. After these students who gave up joining the research group left first, there were only 4 students left in the whole classroom. Xia Yan glanced at the 4 familiar little guys and said slowly, "Can I assume that you have the intention to join the research team?" They all nodded like chicks pecking at rice. However, Xia Yan still had to confirm one by one. He first looked at the little girl with delicate black hair and red eyes standing on the far left. Then he asked in a somewhat suspicious tone, "Oh, did Senior Xin really agree to let you join the research team?" Xia Yan said as a matter of course. "Of course, Dad listens to me the most." I asked you to consult him, not to ask him to consult you, okay? Xia Yan held his forehead slightly. He almost forgot that Senior Xin was a complete daughter slave. He had cooperated with Xia Yan on several missions before, and every time he could see him often holding his daughter's photo to look at it. It seemed that he would have a withdrawal reaction if he didn't look at it for 10 minutes. And he always said that after completing this mission, he would apply to be an instructor, so that he could stay in Konoha to accompany home. Xia Yan wanted to pick up the explosive talisman to block his mouth. "Is there anyone who sets a goal like you?" But Xia Yan heard that he seems to have achieved his wish recently and became a ninja instructor with less money and more work. It seems that he couldn't go to visit him when he has time. Although Senior Xin agreed to this, Xia Yan still has to ask another question. "What about the illusions of your Yuri family?" Home raised her head and said proudly, "Of course I will continue to learn. Because my father said that I am a genius in illusions. Even if I learn slowly, the illusions at home will be emptied out by me soon." Xia Yan's mouth twitched slightly. "Damn, I was accidentally pretended." Home said again. "And my father said that ordinary illusions have limits. So he said that I am so smart, it is a waste to only learn illusions. It is better to combine illusions and sealing techniques to open up a new path beyond illusions." Xia Yan pondered slightly after hearing this. Although Senior Xin sounds like a ruthless daughter-praising machine, but Xia Yan knows that with the illusion attainment of Yuikyone in the original work, it is not completely impossible to do it. So he said, "Sealing combined with illusion. It is indeed an interesting research direction. But I haven't studied illusion much, so I can only provide you with some help in sealing." Home said confidently, "It doesn't matter, my father said I am a genius, so, okay, next one." Xia Yan looked at the next student expressionlessly. "Wait, Teacher Xia Yan, I haven't finished yet. Time is limited, you can say anything else later." Xia Yan said perfunctorily. He hated to see people pretending to be cool in front of him the most. Home puffed up her cheeks in anger, but did not continue to protest, just muttered softly, "Dad has never interrupted me." Xia Yan pretended not to hear and turned his attention to the student on Home's right. Sarutobi Ashuma. This guy was still secretly glancing at Yuikyone at this time, and didn't notice Xia Yan's gaze. Xia Yan stretched out his hand in front of him and waved, and he reacted and smiled ingratiatingly. "Boss Xia Yan, no, hello, Teacher Xia Yan. This is not a tavern." Xia Yan said helplessly. "Ashuma, there are so many things you can learn from your Sarutobi family, why are you here to join in the fun?" Ashuma rolled his eyes and said, Dad said I'm a genius, you know I will go to Baiwako-sama to verify it. Xia Yan interrupted directly. Ashuma's eyes were full of confusion. Why didn't this trick work? There was no way. He had to put his hands on the back of his head and said nonchalantly, "Anyway, my eldest brother will inherit the family business ninjutsu, so it doesn't matter if I don't spend so much time on it. And I asked my mother, and she also said it's okay to try." Did Baiwako-sama really say that? Xia Yan touched his chin. It seems that the principal, as the first party at Xia Yan's school enterprise strategic cooperation plan, has seen the big cape painted by Xia Yan, so he is quite optimistic about the prospects of this sealing technique. Of course, it may also be that he thinks that if the big trumpet is well practiced, it doesn't matter if the small trumpet is useless. After all, Ashuma's brother, Sarutobi Shinazuak, the father of Konohamaru in the future, is also a well-known figure of the younger generation. With such an outstanding eldest son, the Sandmi couple naturally did not set such strict requirements for Ashuma. It seems that Ashuma got Sasuke's script, and he has lived in the shadow of his genius brother since he was a child. Just like a knockout Sasuke who did not experience the extermination of his clan in the world of Tsukayama, Ashuma later became a bad boy for a few years. As for why one is a playboy and the other is a bad boy, it is probably because of their looks. What about Hokage? Xia Yan asked again. Ashuma curled his lips. Dad has been very busy as Hokage, and he has no time to go home these 2 days. Sure enough, I was right to give up my dream of becoming Hokage. Well, Boruto's script has suddenly changed again. Should we fast forward to the time when Ashuma cheated in the Chunin exam using a practical dual disc and was deprived of his ninja qualification by the Sandmi? Xia Yan complained in his heart. Teacher, just accept me. At this time, Ashuma came forward and shook Xia Yan's hand shamelessly. Although it looks cute with his chubby little face, in Xia Yan's eyes, this little face can't help but overlap with his thick appearance in the future. He couldn't help but shudder for a moment. He pulled out his hand with some disgust and said, "Then you stay for the time being, but I will confirm with Baiwako-sama later." Okay. Ashuma cheered. No. Xia Yan tapped his forehead and asked him to stand back. Then he looked at the third student. A cute girl with short brown hair and 2 purple oil paints on her cheeks. No Harlin. Lin, your parents also agreed. Xia Yan confirmed. My parents are not ninjas, so they told me to decide for myself. Lin said generously, not embarrassed because her parents were not ninjas. What do you think? Xia Yan asked again. Lin was a little hesitant at this time, and she organized her words before speaking. Teacher, I have wanted to be a medical ninja since I was a child, because I can help others heal their injuries. But I recently discovered that some injuries seem to be unable to be cured by medical ninjutsu. Xia Yan naturally knew that she was not referring to those difficult and complicated diseases, but to the pain in the heart. Out of curiosity about how no Harling could become the Three-Tails Jinchuriki, Xia Yan also asked about her family background. So he knew that Lin was not a native of Konoha, and her family came to Konoha after the outbreak of the Second Ninja World War. I guess Lin was determined to become a medical ninja because she witnessed the cruelty of war along the way. So Lin, are you going to find a way from the sealing technique? Xia Yan asked. Lin nodded, and then felt a little embarrassed. I'm sorry, teacher. Actually, I told the stories you usually showed us to my parents and other neighbors without your permission. It's okay. Xia Yan waved his hand and smiled. Then what? Everyone listened with great interest every time, and the unhappy things were temporarily forgotten. Lin recalled everyone's smiles, and she couldn't help but smile sweetly. And the keening cards you invented, teacher, also brought happiness to many people. Although it's still very weak, I can feel that the atmosphere of the whole Konoha is improving. And this all started to happen after you returned to Konoha. Lin looked up at Xia Yan, with admiration shining in her dark brown eyes. Others in the classroom were also thoughtful, feeling that since teacher Xia Yan came to teach at the ninja school, life has indeed become more interesting than before. Xia Yan scratched his head. In fact, everything he did was for his own plan, not as great as Lin said. However, he looked at Lin and the students, and even Kushina's somewhat admiring eyes, and still forced a smile. I didn't expect that you, Lin, would find out so quickly. Yes, this is my goal. After all, my ninja way is to create happiness with my heart. Create happiness with my heart. Lin murmured this sentence repeatedly, her eyes getting brighter and brighter. She looked at Xia Yan seriously and said, Teacher Xia Yan, although I don't know anything now, I will definitely study hard and bring happiness to everyone like you in the future. Xia Yan nodded and smiled. I understand your idea. Although I don't know if I can meet your expectations, let's work hard together. Yeah. Lin nodded vigorously. Xia Yan smiled back, and then looked at the last person. Ebisu. Xia Yan remembered that his parents seemed to be civilian ninjas. Before he could ask, Ebisu adjusted his sunglasses and said, Teacher Xia Yan, my parents also agreed. As for the reason why I want to join the research group, it's actually very similar to Lin's. Ebisu glanced at Nohara Lin and said. Then he looked at Xia Yan again, his tone a little excited. To be honest, I have been preparing for this day since my first class with you, Mr. Xia Yan. Because your projection technique has opened the door to a new world for me. Compared to your realistic three-dimensional projection, those books and movies are nothing. I believe this technique will definitely bring changes to the ninja world, no, a revolution. So of course I won't miss this opportunity. Xia Yan nodded with approval. He is worthy at being the elite tutor who will be responsible for teaching Konohamaru in the future. Although his ability is not strong, his vision is very unique. He can see the application prospects of projection technique so quickly. However, Ebisu, you're bleeding from the nose. Xia Yan reminded. This is an old problem. The 7-year-old Ebisu was slightly startled, and then he took out a red handkerchief and wiped it as if nothing had happened. Xia Yan. ... Why did I feel that what he said just now was a little strange after seeing Ebisu bleeding from the nose? I always feel that this student seems to use his knowledge of sealing techniques in strange places. In order to prevent him from going astray, Xia Yan made a decision. I will teach students like you. After initially confirming everyone's willingness and determination to join the group, Xia Yan slowly looked at them again. Daddy's girl Yuzukyo-ne. Second generation Shadow Ashuma. Little angel Nohara Rin. Big pervert Ebisu. Is this the basic team for his future plan? Xia Yan's expression gradually became strange. I always feel that except for Nohara Rin, the others are not very reliable. Teacher, when do we start the activities of the research group? Ashuma approached again and asked in a familiar manner. Xia Yan once again pushed his face away with disdain. Didn't I say that? Xia Yan continued. Under normal circumstances, there will be activities after school on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, but you can also ask me and Kushina if you have any questions at other times. Kushina on the side also nodded. Today is Friday. Ashuma raised his hand. Everyone also looked at Xia Yan with expectant eyes. Xia Yan nodded. That's right, so next we will carry out the first activity of the research group. Great. Everyone cheered. Forbidden, okay, I won't ban you this time. Xia Yan said helplessly. Great. X4 Xia Yan waved his hand and said. In that case, let's move to my office first. Great. X4 Xia Yan. Forbidden. The two chapters will be released together, so there will be no afternoon. There is also Lin setting reference to the Book of Arrays, and some more details. This is just right for Xia Yan's 4 students to be born as civilians, civilian ninjas, small ninjas, and big ninjas. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 72 5 of the 4 Heavenly Kings. A common sense. Led by Xia Yan, everyone left the classroom and started to move towards the sealing technique office. When leaving, Kushina was entrusted by Xia Yan to go in another direction. Along the way, Ebisu, who was born in a civilian ninja family, was holding up his sunglasses and trying to get close to Ashuma. However, after Ashuma said a few perfunctory words, he approached Yuzukyo-ne with a smug face and made small talk. Yuzukyo-ne was a little annoyed by Ashuma, so she came to Lin and chatted with her. Seeing Lin's thoughtful look, she asked curiously, Lin, what are you thinking about? Nohara Lin looked out the window of the corridor and saw that students were leaving the school in groups of 3 or 5 on the playground. She turned her head to look at Kyo-ne, shook her head and said, Nothing, I just suddenly remembered that Obito has been missing after school recently, so I am a little worried. When Kyo-ne heard that it was about Obito, she immediately lost interest. He probably goes around to help the elderly again, she said casually, and then tilted her head to think about it. But now that you mention it, I don't think I've seen him on the street after school recently. Could it be that he has a girlfriend and is secretly dating? Hilly. Home joked while hugging Lin's arm. Lin smiled helplessly and said, I just hope he doesn't get involved in strange incidents. Since the classroom and the sealing technique office are very close, it didn't take long for them to arrive at the office door. Xia Yan, who was walking in the front, heard someone talking in the office, but didn't care and opened the door directly. Then he saw Obito and Kai wearing yellow tights. They have been coming to the office every day after school recently to borrow tights for special training, so Xia Yan was not surprised. At this time, Obito was sticking his butt out, looking out through the gap in the blinds stealthily, muttering to himself. Why are there so many people outside today? We don't even have a chance to sneak into the woods behind the mountain for special training. Behind him, Kai was doing squats with a grunt, and said, Obito, it's not a good idea for us to be sneaky like this. Anyway, there's nothing shameful. No, it's because our whole body is shameful that we have to be sneaky. Obito was about to complain, but he was startled by the door behind him that suddenly opened. He looked back nervously, then pressed his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. What? It turned out to be Mr. Xia Yan. As Obito was talking, he was suddenly petrified. Because he saw Lin appearing from behind Mr. Xia Yan, covering her mouth with a look of surprise. Crack, he seemed to see the future scene of himself and Lin with children and grandchildren, and turned into glass fragments and disappeared into the void. To make matters worse, Ashuma, who came in later, was surprised and said in a tone of discovery, Obito, why are you wearing Kai's clothes? Isn't the feng shui of this classroom bad? Why does it always become a social death scene? Xia Yan fell into deep thought. Special training, this is all for special training. And this is a teaching aid invented by teacher Xia Yan. Look, this dress is yellow, different from Kai's. In the sealing art office, Obito was still chattering and correcting Ashuma's words just now. Ashuma picked his ears and said, I know, you have said it many times. He felt that Obito was annoying, disturbing him from appreciating Home's beauty. It's not for you to hear. Obito thought to himself, and his eyes couldn't help but glance at Nohara Ring who was whispering with Home. Ring is so good, the case is solved now, and Obito was not involved in the strange incident. Home was whispering in Lin's ear with her mouth covered. Because he has completely become the strange thing itself. Nohara Ring, who was originally in a complicated mood, couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh after hearing what Home said. Hey, Ring seems to smile at me. Obito, who has always been paying attention to Lin, naturally would not miss such details. The scene of him and Lin's children and grandchildren suddenly appeared in his mind. Ebisu, who stood aside and watched coldly, took in everyone's reactions. It seems that Obito likes Lin and Ashuma likes Home. Humph, it's really boring. Is this really a research group, not a social gathering? And according to this rule, then wouldn't I be? Ebisu's eyes met my guy's unexpectedly. Akai also gave him a dazzling smile. ... Oh no, it feels like a myocardial infarction. Ebisu silently looked away, pretending not to see it. At this time, Xia Yan also quickly tidied up a corner of the office, put a few tables and chairs, and then asked everyone to come and sit down. Today is the first activity of our sealing technique research group. I don't think anyone needs to introduce themselves. So before we get to the point, do you have any questions about this research group? Teacher Xia Yan, Ashuma raised his hand and said, why are Obito and Kai here too? I thought there were only 4 of us. Obito is obviously not in the top 20, and Kai didn't even take the sealing technique class. Obito looked at Ashuma with some hurt. Why would a licker make things difficult for a licker? Xia Yan started to explain. Kai is considered a non-staff member and will only participate in some teaching aid testing activities. We invited him to join because he has a level of physical skills that exceeds that of his peers and can provide us with a lot of interesting data. Hearing that teacher Xia Yan had such a high evaluation of Kai, everyone couldn't help but look at Kai. Kai was not shy either, he raised his thumbs and showed 2 rows of white and translucent teeth. With the arrogant and unique melon-shaped head, the 4 students fell into deep thought. Teacher, are you sure the Kai you were talking about is this one? As for Obito, he is indeed an official member of the research team and will participate in all activities. But his work is slightly different from yours. Because most of the time you are only responsible for assisting in the research, while Obito is responsible for being studied. For example, if you learn any binding arrays or shaker confinement arrays in the future, you can always ask him to test them. Everyone looked at Obito with sympathy. Obito, who had signed the humiliating treaty in order to defeat Kakashi, could only force out an ugly smile in response. Then Xia Yan concluded. Therefore, Obito has also been given the opportunity to join the research team. Otherwise, Ashuma, do you want to replace Obito? Ashuma's face changed, and he quickly took Obito's hand and said, "Welcome to the research team." Xia Yan smiled lightly and said, "If everyone has no other questions, then let's get to the point." Xia Yan looked around and saw that no one said anything, so he said, "Well, since today is the first activity, we will not do too serious and complicated research, so we will test the new teaching aids later." Everyone was eager to try after hearing this. Only Home remembered what Obito had just said, and suddenly looked horrified. She pointed at Obito with a trembling finger and said, "Teacher Xia Yan, could it be that the new teaching aids you were talking about are the ones that Obito and Kai are wearing?" Xia Yan raised his eyebrows and said, "As expected of you, you are the daughter of the real Home Senior. You guessed it so quickly. I wanted to keep it a secret. Yes, what we are going to test today is this training suit." Home forced out a smile that was uglier than crying. Although she was praised, she was not happy at all. Even Lin, who had just said that she would follow the footsteps of teacher Xia Yan, fell into deep thought. Obviously, the teacher's ninja way is to create happiness with heart. Why is she not happy at all now? Ashuma muttered. "Since you said so, there is nothing we can do." In fact, he was a little excited in his heart, thinking that this dress was actually quite nice. As for Ebisu, he didn't know what he was thinking, and his nose started bleeding again, and Kai stood up excitedly. "Teacher, are you testing the action copying function of the training suit like before?" Recently, he has been training with Obito, and watching himself make Obito's actions look like himself step by step, he has a wonderful sense of accomplishment. It feels that as long as Obito cuts a melon-shaped haircut, he will be no different from him. He glanced at the new students with excitement, thinking about who to transform into his appearance next. Everyone couldn't help but shudder when he was looked at like this. But to Kai's regret, Xia Yan shook his head and said, "Today we are testing the new function of the training suit Mark, -2. As he said that, he took out the storage card and conjured up several small yellow tights and placed them on the table. "Okay, time is running out, everyone change clothes quickly." Girls couldn't go to the cubicle to change. Yu-Hong looked at the pile of eye-catching tights with a sad face, and said to teacher Xia Yan with a pleading face, "Teacher, we are just watching from the side, can you not wear them?" No Harlin on the side also nodded hesitantly. Xia Yan looked serious. Of course not, after all, practice is the only criterion for testing truth. Seeing that the two are still looking sad, he said helplessly, "I knew this might happen, but fortunately I have prepared styles that you girls will like." Hong and Lin's eyes finally brightened up again after hearing this. Sure enough, teacher Xia Yan will not let us down. Then the two of them looked expectantly at teacher Xia Yan as he took out two pink tights. Their smiles gradually froze. "I know you girls like pink, so you won't have any objections to this, right?" Xia Yan smiled wisely. No Harlin and Yukione had no expression on their faces, took two yellow tights from the table, and walked into the compartment silently. Chapter 73 New Functions of Training Suit. After the boys had changed into their training uniforms for a while, the two girls came out of the cubicle shyly. In a trance, Xia Yan seemed to see two kunkuns coming over. As soon as they came out, Ashuma, who was wearing a pink tights, came forward and shared her experience with Home. "Home, this training uniform is amazing. It feels like you are not wearing it. Do you have the same feeling?" Home's face suddenly turned black. Xia Yan, who was standing by, couldn't bear to watch it. Because he was a little worried that Saratobi Mirai might not be able to be born. In order to prevent Ashuma from saying anything shocking again, he clapped his hands and said, "Since everyone is ready, let's go to the training ground." "Hey!" Yukione looked at Xia Yan with horror. "Wait! Teacher, aren't we taking the test here?" It was okay to be seen by everyone in training uniforms, but if other students saw her like this, how could you face people in the future? The space here is too small, you can't move freely, and you can't achieve the test effect. Xia Yan looked as if it was a matter of course. At this time, Obito saw that Lin behind Kurone also looked at each other with a helpless look, and quickly volunteered. "Don't worry, Akate and I have trained for many days, and we know how to walk without being discovered. Just follow me." No Harlin and Yukione looked at each other, and finally gritted their teeth and reluctantly accepted Obito's proposal. So everyone left the office again, and under the leadership of Obito, like a guerrilla, they sneaked to the training ground behind that teaching building. There, two figures were already waiting. They were Kushina and Might Dai. The only difference from usual was that my guy was also wearing a yellow tights. Because he came here today for the small task that Xia Yan had told him before. That is to demonstrate the function of this training suit to the students. So although he still felt that the yellow tights were heresy, out of professionalism, he gritted his teeth and put it on. It was just a task for teacher Xia Yan. But this also led to an awkward situation when the might father and son, both wearing yellow tights, met each other. It was like a father and son meeting in a red light district, and neither of them was a customer. Let's not talk about the might father and son who went to the side to talk. Xia Yan first clapped his hands to attract the attention of the others who were watching the show. Time is limited, let's start testing the training suit as soon as possible. First, let me briefly introduce the principle and usage of this training suit. Xia Yan looked at Obito. Obito, how much do you remember about what I introduced to you before? Obito, who was still secretly glancing at Nohara-rin, shuddered like PTSD when he heard teacher Xia Yan call his name. However, he thought about it and found out. Hey, he seems to know this question. Because the teacher said that this tights was made based on the principle of the Sharingan, so he was impressed. So Obito became arrogant again, and said to other students in a somewhat showy way, let me tell you. This dress can allow one person to perfectly copy another person's movements. I used this dress before to learn all of Kaisuke no Ha fluid jutsu. Lin, Hong and Ebisu were all amazed when they heard this, and they didn't expect that the sealing technique could be used in this way. Only Ashuma saw Hong's admiration and said unwillingly, Humph, what's so great about Konoha fluid jutsu, let me come next time and copy our Sarutobi clan's Sarutobi fluid jutsu for you. ... Xia Yan heard a few more black lines on his forehead. Don't sell your own unique skills so easily just to pick up girls. He shook his head helplessly and brought the topic back. Obito, what's the principle? Obito scratched his head. I remember that it seems to use a perception array. Yes, but it also needs a resonance array. Xia Yan added a sentence, and then looked at other students. As Obito told me just now, these training suits are painted with perception arrays and resonance arrays. So they can record the chakra flow and body movements in one person's body, and then reproduce them in the other person, so as to achieve the effect of physical copying. But we are not testing this today, so I won't go into details. The function we want to test today actually requires the help of a small prop. Seeing that everyone was looking forward to it, Xia Yan did not keep them in suspense and took out another storage card to unlock it. Bang! After the white smoke, Xia Yan had a small pile of scrolls in his hand. Then he distributed these scrolls to everyone one by one. Dad. Akai. Dad. Akai. At this time, the might father and son over there also went through the passionate routine of arguing, domestic violence, and crying. The two of them didn't know what consensus they reached, and they walked over with tears in their eyes and each received a scroll. Xia Yan saw Kushina standing aside with her hands behind her back, not being very sociable, so he said, Kushina, didn't I give you a training suit before, and it was wrecked? Didn't you bring it? Who knew that? Kushina said to him expressionlessly. Even if I die, I will not wear that kind of thing even if I jump off the Okige's Yanyan. Also. Kushina gritted her teeth and added, don't wrap that thing as a gift to others in the future. God knows what she felt when she happily opened the gift after returning home that day and found that it was a tights. Grandma Mita was almost laughing to death. Xia Yan, who didn't know that he almost caused the Nine-Tails rebellion in advance, saw that Kushina's hair began to flutter, and didn't dare to say anything. He stepped back with a smile on his face. At this time, the others had already opened the scroll and found that it was blank, so they were checking it over and over again. Xia Yan coughed a few times to attract everyone's attention, and then reminded, you can inject chakra into the scroll and see what happens. So the students and my guy were curious and did what Xia Yan said. As the chakra was injected, they were surprised to find that various numbers and symbols formed by ink began to appear on the scroll. But what attracted their attention the most was a picture that occupied most of the entire scroll. This picture was familiar to everyone, because they saw it on the first day of learning to refine chakra. Chakra Meridian Map. However, the Chakra Meridian Map on this scroll was much more detailed than the one in the textbook. Xia Yan began to explain again. Chakra is the physical energy absorbed from the 130 trillion cells of the human body, one by one, and mixed with the spiritual energy trained through hard training and accumulated experience. Then, just like blood flows through blood vessels, the refined chakra can also reach every corner of the body through the meridians throughout the body. This is the so-called meridian system. and there are 361 chakra acupoints in the meridians. If chakra is compared to water, then the chakra acupoints are the outlets, because chakra can be released from them. Everyone has learned these things when they first went to school, so they should still remember them. Everyone nodded to show that they remembered. Only a certain Xia Yan felt less confident than everyone else. Seeing this, Xia Yan pretended not to notice. Since everyone remembers it, I won't talk about it in detail. Then you can try to mobilize the chakra in your body and see if there are any changes in the painting in your hand. Everyone did as Xia Yan said, and soon they made an amazing discovery. They found that as they controlled the chakra, the blue ink on the meridian map that symbolized the chakra would also change accordingly. Gather the chakra in the left hand, and the blue ink on the map would also gather in the left hand of the portrait. Vice versa. Even when they extracted chakra from the cells, the blue ink in the corresponding part would increase, and various parameters would be displayed next to it. It's amazing. Everyone had a lot of fun playing with the scroll and trying various things. Even the boys began to compete with the meridian map, frantically mobilizing their own chakra, trying to make it unable to react. But this was like a cat fighting wits and courage with a mirror, and the result was naturally that they ended up in a miserable defeat. Xia Yan didn't continue talking right away, but waited patiently for a while. Seeing that everyone had almost finished playing, he spoke. The principle of this scroll is very similar to the action copying function I just mentioned, but this time it does not copy actions, but directly displays various information about your meridian system on the scroll. In this way, everyone can more intuitively judge the flow of chakra in their bodies, rather than relying solely on feelings. Ashuma, who usually plays a lot of keening games in the tavern, is not too surprised by this moving meridian map. He suddenly had an idea, raised his hand and asked, "Teacher, if we use projection techniques, we should be able to generate more intuitive images." The other students also thought it made sense and looked at Xia Yan. Xia Yan also nodded and praised. Very good, everyone should learn from Ashuma, learn to apply what you have learned, and draw inferences from one example. Just as Ashuma was touching his head and laughing, he heard teacher Xia Yan say, "But you ignored the issues of cost and portability. The teaching aids we are testing now may be popularized in ninja schools in the future, so we can only save costs as much as possible. And the projection machine you mentioned is either as portable as a dual disc but expensive, or as medium cost as a keening game console but difficult to carry at any time, neither of which is suitable for popularization. At most, we can place a few desktop machines in the school in the future, and use them when students need more detailed meridian maps." Everyone nodded after hearing this. Xia Yan said again, "It just so happens that I have made a portable machine, so I will demonstrate it to you." As he said that, Xia Yan took out a small machine and threw it to Ashuma. "Here, put on this compact power detector." Chapter 74. The style suddenly became Dragon Ball Battle Power Detector. Everyone was very curious when they heard it, and they all came to Ashuma to take a look. The structure of this battle power detector was very simple, just a small machine with a green lens extending outward. But it always makes people feel that the style of painting is not quite the same as that of the ninja world. Ashuma, who was surrounded by everyone, couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He figured it out for a while before he figured out how to put on this machine. As soon as he put it on, he saw everyone stepping back and looking at him with strange eyes. "What's wrong? Am I wearing it wrong?" Everyone looked hesitant, not knowing how to euphemistically say, "Ashuma, you look like a bad guy wearing this thing." Xia Yan on the side had a blank expression on his face, but secretly he was trying to hold back his laughter. After all, even the thick-browed and big-eyed Kakaru didn't look like a good person when he wore this thing. Ashuma naturally couldn't hold it. Next, Xia Yan gave a little instruction and asked Ashuma to inject chakra into the battle power detector to start it. After Ashuma did as he was told, he saw some startup information flashing on the green lens in front of his left eye. Then he saw that a big number 5 appeared above Obito's head, who was just in the lens field of view. Ashuma was naturally attracted by it, and after looking at it for a few more times, he was even more surprised to find that chakra meridians began to emerge in Obito's body. Seeing this, he couldn't help but shout excitedly, "Wow, teacher, this thing actually has a perspective function." Everyone. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Lin and Home quickly realized something, and their expressions suddenly panicked, and they quickly hid behind Kushina, who was not wearing tights. Xia Yan also had a black line on his head, and quickly corrected, "Don't talk nonsense, you just see the chakra meridians in their bodies through the lens. If it has a perspective function, I will keep it for myself." Ashuma scratched his head and laughed, and he also felt that what he said just now is a bit ambiguous. Just when he wanted to laugh it off, he saw Hong and Lin glaring at him. Ashuma is the most annoying, Hong said angrily, and then turned his head away from him. Ashuma saw this, his whole body turned grey, and he felt that his life had no meaning anymore, but human beings' sorrows and joys are not the same. Obito took this opportunity to grab the combat power detector and put it on himself, and then looked at Ashuma. Wow! I can really see the meridian system. Obito couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's amazing." But as he looked at it, the joyful smile on his face gradually disappeared. Because he always felt that he seemed to have heard of this function somewhere. As he was from the same family of eye techniques, he quickly reacted. Isn't this the Byakugan? Obito had always been worried that before he opened his eyes, teacher Xia Yan would develop the ninjutsu copy function of the tights. Unexpectedly, the first to be shot was the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. But the Byakugan has already appeared, so how far will the Sharingan be? The Uchiha clan, in danger. Thinking of this, Obito couldn't help but turn grey, and he felt that his life had no meaning anymore. Just like before, human beings' sorrows and joys are not the same. Just as Ashuma and Obito are sighing and licking each other's wounds. The others were also excited to take turns wearing the machine to experience it. The result was exactly as Obito said. The scene they saw was very similar to the description of the Byakugan's ability in the rumors. It was like a Byakugan was transplanted in their left eye socket. For a moment, everyone felt that their three perspectives had been refreshed, and they had a deep understanding of the magic of the sealing technique. Especially the 4 people who joined the research team today, they were more and more glad that they chose this path, and they all looked at teacher Xia Yan with admiration. But Xia Yan had to pour cold water on them at this time and explained, "It's not as magical as you think. After all, the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan, in addition to seeing the meridian system, also has the ability to see through other things, see far, see through, have a 360-degree view, etc. Which is not comparable to my little invention. Not to mention that this thing can only be used with training clothes to be effective. We can't put training clothes on the other party before fighting. So our equipment can only be used to assist in training at most, but it can't be compared with the Byakugan." After listening to this, everyone felt that there was still a big gap between the two, and finally calmed down. Xia Yan was relieved when he saw this. He didn't want to deal with the old antiques of the Hyuga clan now. "But teacher, you're already amazing to be able to do this." At this time, Lin came to Xia Yan and looked up and said seriously, "After all, the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan is innate, but your detector can be used by everyone." Ebisu also said with sunglasses on, "Indeed, no matter how powerful the Byakugan is, it has nothing to do with this. Even if this detector is not as good as the Byakugan, it can really help us." And Yudikyorane also said confidently, "And with our assistance, sooner or later you'll be able to create a sealing tool that can rival the Byakugan and Sharingan." Seeing this, Ashuma also stepped forward and agreed, "Me too. And my die was already in tears. Akai, did you see it? This is youth." "Yeah. Dad, I also feel the breath of youth surging in everyone's body." And Kushina looked at Xia Yan and the little ones around him, smiling, feeling that her job was very meaningful. Only Obito stood aside and was speechless. He understood the truth. But listening to everyone discussing how to copy the functions of the Byakugan and Sharingan, he couldn't be as happy as everyone else. "And there is a Uchiha clan member as old as him standing here, are you guys laughing loudly like this?" Xia Yan felt helpless when he saw everyone so excited. He just didn't want to attract attention, so he downplayed the function of this machine, but he didn't expect everyone to be so excited. Xia Yan smiled helplessly, waved his hand to let everyone quiet down, and then said, "You have a point. Turning the impossible into the possible is indeed the most interesting part of the sealing technique. Maybe one day, we can do what you said. But you have to eat one bite at a time. No matter how big the dream is, you can't do it without being down to earth and working hard step by step." "Yes, so the test returned to the track," Xia Yan said. "When everyone used this detector to point at people just now, you should have seen a number." Everyone nodded. "Teacher, what does that number mean?" Hong asked. "Since it is called a combat power detector, the number is naturally combat power." Xia Yan raised a finger and smiled. "First of all, Lin, can you tell me how we usually evaluate a ninja's strength?" Lin thought about it for a while, and then said, "During class, the teacher said that it should be a comprehensive evaluation based on the 8 data of ninja, tai, general, sage, strength, agility, essence, and seal." Xia Yan nodded and said, yes, in fact, at the end of each semester, the school will also evaluate you based on these 8 data. As he said that, he glanced at a guy who only had 2 sages without leaving a trace. And the combat power I mentioned is actually similar to these 8 data, and it is also a dimension to evaluate a person's strength. As for what combat power is, it is a bit complicated to explain in detail. Everyone also knows that after chakra is extracted, it will temporarily exist in the meridian system. Then at this stage, you can generally regard combat power as the amount of chakra in a person's meridian system. Everyone was a little confused, feeling that this definition seemed to be inconsistent with the name of combat power. Xia Yan was not surprised to see this, and continued to explain. Everyone should also know that the physique of us ninjas is not much stronger than that of ordinary people. The reason why we can fly over eaves and walls and have infinite strength is that we rely on the chakra in our bodies to activate our bodies. This is also the reason why you can easily defeat ordinary adults despite your young age. Everyone nodded to show their understanding. Xia Yan continued. Within a certain range, we can simply think that the greater the amount of chakra in the meridian system, the stronger the body's activity will be. Strength, speed, endurance and even recovery will increase accordingly. At the same time, a large amount of chakra also means that the power of the 9 tai in general performed will also be greatly improved. In addition, the efficiency of refining chakra in battle by genin and even tuning is mostly far less than the speed of consumption. So in this level of battle, compared with the essence that represents the potential for chakra production, the amount of chakra stored in the meridians is the most critical factor affecting victory or defeat. And this is why I call it combat power. The students were also thoughtful after listening to teacher Xia Yan's explanation. They compared this theory with their own experience and found that it was exactly the same as what teacher Xia Yan said. Especially for the students of the ninja school, they were even worse than the genin mentioned by the teacher. Basically, they could not concentrate on refining chakra in battle. Therefore, when they competed in class, they would refine chakra before going into battle, like 2 deflated balloons colliding. Therefore, the amount of chakra in the meridians is indeed the key to determining victory or defeat. It is also quite appropriate to call it combat power. At this time Xia Yan continued. Of course, when it comes to the battle at the level of genin or even kage, combat power will not be able to completely determine the outcome. At the time, the importance of Xia Yan, which represents knowledge and wisdom, will become more and more prominent. At the same time, since the genin can refine chakra very quickly, the combat power is no longer limited to the amount of chakra in the meridians, but will become more and more similar to jing. And yin, which represents the control of chakra, can also make up for the disadvantage of insufficient chakra by actively mobilizing chakra. However, what Xia Yan did not continue to say was that when it comes to battles at the kage level and above, things will return to basics, and everyone will be back on the track of competing for chakra volume. Then Xia Yan continued. To make it easier to remember, you can think of the meridian system as a container for chakra. The size of the container determines how much chakra it can hold. So you can also refer to combat power as vessel. At your current stage, the role of chakra is basically to improve physical activity. So it can be simply understood as, the larger the container, the better it can improve physical activity. So I call it, the law of larger vessels, better activity. Chapter 75. 8 Gates. After explaining the concept of combat power, Xia Yan said, then let's experience it in practice. Obito, come up and demonstrate first. Obito. ... So under Xia Yan's instructions, the tool man Obito handed the scroll to Lin and walked to Xia Yan's side. Obito, refine chakra as usual, until you can't refine it anymore. Xia Yan said. Obito, who didn't know what teacher Xia Yan wanted him to do, was a little nervous. Hearing such a simple request, he was relieved. No problem. He replied happily, then made hand seals, took a horse stance, and began to refine chakra with all his strength. And Akai, who was wearing a combat power detector aimed at Obito, heard a beeping sound from inside, and the numbers on the lens kept jumping. Obito's combat power has begun to increase. What a powerful device. Akai explained without any instruction. 13. 21. 30. 36. It's still increasing. The other students also gathered around Lin and saw that the value representing Obito's combat power on the scroll was rising. But not long after, Obito's combat power increased slowly, and it didn't increase for a long time. Obito blushed and couldn't help saying, Teacher, I'm full, I feel like it's about to overflow. Xia Yan waved his hand to let him stop. At this time, whether it was the chakra detector or the meridian map on the scroll, it could be seen that Obito's meridians were full of chakra. And Obito's final combat power stopped at 50 points. But since there was no comparison object, no one knew whether it was really powerful or not. So Xia Yan began to explain. Other teachers should have told you this during class. Even ordinary people will spontaneously produce a certain amount of chakra in their bodies, which is why illusions can work on them. And the amount of chakra in a normal adult male is about 5 if measured by combat power. This means that although Obito looks like a child, his chakra amount is already 10 times that of an ordinary person. And this is what we often call the difference in ninja qualifications. In fact, during the entrance examination to the ninja school, there'll always be a ninja from the Hyuga clan responsible for checking everyone's meridian capacity. The fact that you can stand here now means that you all have meridian capacity that exceeds that of ordinary people, that is, you have the qualifications to become a ninja. After Obito demonstrated, Xia Yan asked other students to refine chakra like Obito just did, and test their combat power limits. So everyone dispersed a little and refined chakra on their own. Xia Yan walked to Might Die and explained his work to him later. Not long after, everyone got their own combat power limit values. The result was similar to what Xia Yan expected. Although everyone was still young and the meridian capacity could not be separated, it can be seen that Obito had the highest capacity, followed by Ashuma and Kai, followed by Nohara-rin, Yui Kyorane and Ebisu. Ashuma saw that his fighting ability was not as good as Obito's, and he doubted his life. He asked Xia Yan, "Teacher, is there something wrong with my scroll? Otherwise, how could my device be smaller than Obito's? I remember that he was just the last one." "Obito, I'm still here." Before Xia Yan could speak, Ebisu spoke first to comfort him. "Ashuma, it's okay. The teacher just said that even if our devices are small, we can make up for it with skills." Kai also said, "Although my device is not as big as Obito's, I will not lose in endurance." "Are you sure you were talking about chakra?" Xia Yan was speechless after hearing this. Jian Hong and Lin were about to join the discussion, so they interrupted him and said, "Let's not use abbreviations anymore. As for Obito's situation, it's actually quite normal. As I said just now, combat effectiveness is not the only parameter to measure strength. There are many other things that affect the outcome of a battle, such as Xia Yan, and Xia Yan. As for the reason why Obito's actual combat performance is average, you have to find it out for yourselves." "No, teacher, you only said Xia Yan. And you said it 3 times in a row." Shenhua? No, it was Obito who was speechless. Everyone immediately felt more balanced. Sure enough, the 6-path sage opened a window for Obito and locked the door. Is this the so-called wisdom of locking the door? Xia Yan continued to explain. As for the reason why Obito's fighting power is so high, it is naturally because he comes from the Uchiha clan. Even without the Sharingan, the chakra talent of this clan is one of the best in the ninja world. Then he touched Obito's head again and said to Ashuma, "So Ashuma, if you don't work hard, you will be surpassed by Obito very soon." Ashuma looked strange. If someone had said this to him half an hour ago, he would have sneered. But after Xia Yan's explanation, he did feel that Obito had great potential. Not inferior to him. And Ebisu, who usually prided himself on his academic performance, was a little confused when he found that his fighting power was at the bottom and even not as good as that of girls. Thinking of his parents who are civilian ninjas, he asked Xia Yan, "Teacher, does our birth determine our achievements? No matter how hard we try, we can never compare to the children of the big ninja clans? Even if they're the last one like Obito?" "Obito. I said it, I'm still standing here." Hong and Lin also felt sympathetic. In fact, they had felt that girls were inferior to boys in both physical fitness and chakra. Can this world be better? Even chakra is gender discriminatory. Xia Yan looked at everyone who was a little confused, and slowly said, "If I say that birth does not affect future achievements, I must be lying. But if future achievements are determined solely by birth, then we wouldn't be gathered here now." Everyone was slightly startled when they heard this, and then they remembered that the purpose of their coming here was to test teaching aids. Could it be that these teaching aids? Seeing that everyone was thinking, Xia Yan smiled and didn't explain, just said, "Mr. Dai, please show them." "Okay. I've been waiting for a long time." Might Dai was in high spirits, handed the scroll to Wakai, and walked forward with big strides. He looked around at all the students, showing his ancestral bright smile, and raised his thumb high. "Hello everyone, I'm Wakai's father. Everyone. We know it without you saying it. Xia Yan began to explain. Next, Mr. Dai will show us a forbidden technique called 8 Gates of Dunjia. Forbidden technique. Everyone's heart jumped when they heard it. After all, not all techniques can be called forbidden techniques. The so-called 8 gates are the 8 places where the chakra points in the meridian system of the human body are most concentrated, namely the opening gate, the rest gate, the life gate, the injury gate, the closing gate, the view gate, the shock gate and the death gate. The 8 gates will set limits on the amount of chakra flowing in the body, so that we will not use too much force and cause physical injury. And the principle of Mr. Dai's technique is to gain extraordinary power by removing the restrictions of these 8 gates one by one. It is said that if all 8 gates are opened, it is even possible to gain power that surpasses the 5 shadows in a short period of time. After listening to Xia Yan's explanation, everyone's eyes widened and looked at each other. It felt hard to believe that this somewhat funny uncle in front of them actually mastered such a powerful forbidden technique. Even Akai was surprised. Although he knew that his father was practicing a powerful physical technique, he had never formally demonstrated it to him. Okay, Mr. Dai, you can start. Xia Yan stepped back a few steps and gave the stage to Mike Dai. No problem. Mike Dai gave Xia Yan a thumbs up. Then he closed his eyes and concentrated for a moment. When he opened his eyes again, his aura was completely different, which made everyone shudder. Then Mike opened his eyes wide and suddenly shouted, 8 gates, end of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.